Testing, testing. Testing.
Okay, can everyone turn your microphone on? In compliance with the Open Publics Meeting Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reasons to believe this meeting is being held in violation of this act, they should state so at this time. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Werner? Mr. Venuto?
Here.
Mr. Levin? Mrs. Notch?
Here.
Ms. Sheehan?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Zexer?
Here.
Mr. Yeager?
Here.
Ms. Stevenson?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll need a motion to adopt our first resolution, 424-2025, William and Emily Young, 122 Decatur Street, Block 1041, Lot 6. Do you
I'll
have a
make a motion.
I'll second.
Excuse me, okay, I'm sorry, I had the wrong one. Thank you. So who motioned? Mr. Zexer, and anyone second?
Yep, Tim.
Mr. Walsh, thank you. Motion by Mr. Zexer, seconded by Mr. Walsh. Mrs. Notch?
Abstain.
Ms. Sheehan?
Abstain.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, our second resolution, we'll need a motion to adopt 04-24-2025, 519 Franklin Street LLC, 519 Franklin Street, Block 1076, Lot 1.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Mr. Yeager motions. Mrs. Notch seconds. Mrs. Notch?
Abstain.
Ms. Sheehan?
Abstain.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Abstain.
Thank you. You have minutes.
Okay, we'll need a motion to adopt the minutes from March 27th, 2025.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Zexer, seconded by Ms. Stevenson. Mrs. Notch?
Abstain.
Ms. Sheehan?
Abstain.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Abstain.
Mr. Venuto?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, our first application is Matthew and Kara Crane, 1026 New York Avenue, Block 1102, lots 13 and 14. Please, are they here?
Evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. John Amenhauser of the DeWeese Law Firm here this evening on behalf of the applicants, Matthew and Kara Crane. Subject property for this application is 1026 New York Avenue. It's identified on the city's tax map as Block 1102, lots 13 and 14, and it's located in the R2 zoning district. Prior to attending tonight's meeting, we did receive recommendations for approval from City of Cape May Fire, City of Cape May Public Works, and the City of Cape May Shade Tree Commission. all of which, I should say, the Fire Department and Public Works had no comment. Shade Tree recommended approval with a condition that we will discuss this evening. Through the application before you this evening, the applicant seeking variance relief pursuant to the C1, C2, and D2 criteria under the municipal land use law. The specific relief that we're seeking relates to a residential lot that right now houses a semi-detached duplex residential dwelling in a zone that only permits single families, which is the cause for the D2 variance, the expansion of that use. We also need C variance relief related to minimum required lot size, minimum required lot frontage and width, maximum permitted lot coverage, and minimum required off-street parking. Here with me this evening to provide some testimony in regard to the relief being sought, I have Mr. Paul Cates. Paul's a professional engineer and planner with the firm of Cates Snyder Engineering. I know Paul's been before the board a number of times in the past, but I'm happy to elicit credentials if required, Mr. Chairman, before we begin tonight.
Okay.
Elicit some credentials from Paul?
If you would, please.
Sure.
Yeah, so,
First, for starters, Mr. Walsh had to recuse himself because of a conflict. He's within 200 feet, but let the record to reflect that he will not show.
Thank you.
yeah, so I have a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, but I've been working in the municipal engineering field since 2003. I was licensed as a professional engineer in 2011, as a professional planner in 2019. I've been the principal of our firm for 5 years now, and we represent currently 5 boards, 3 in Cape May County and 2 in Atlantic County, and I've given testimony to many others, including this one.
Okay, very good.
Is he acceptable?
We do.
Thank you. Paul, if you can you start by just giving the board an idea of the existing conditions on the lot?
1 second.
Oh,
Swear me in.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
I do.
Yeah,
If you can, Paul.
Yeah, so our lot is a 32.5 by 125-foot deep lot located on the south side of New York Avenue between Philadelphia and Madison Avenues. We are located in the R2 zoning district. The lot is currently occupied by a semi-detached dwelling. The home is built directly adjacent to the home next to it. They share a party wall. There is also a detached garage along with driveway fencing and a concrete walkway. What we are proposing is to demolish the existing concrete walkway and add a permeable paver patio and a garage threshold, along with underground stormwater retention system.
So, Paul, based on the application that we filed and I just went over, would you agree that the specific variance relief we need is a D2 variance for the expansion of a pre-existing nonconformity as it relates to the type of dwelling that's situated on the property?
Yeah, because this type of development is not permitted in the zone, that's what's prompting this D2 variance.
And then the remainder of the variances that I went over, would you agree that they could be considered under both the C1 and/or the C2 criteria of the municipal land use law?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Cates, can you bring your microphone closer? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
So, Paul, in terms of the bulk variance relief or the area variances that we're seeking, can you go over your professional opinion as to how it is that you believe they can be granted under C1 or C2?
Yeah, so the C1 criteria is a hardship, it represents a hardship variance. The NJIC states that this variance can be granted where exceptional narrowness or unique lot characteristics exist, which I am paraphrasing. So our lot is an existing undersized lot, and therefore we're limited in what we can do. This patio on a conforming lot would not be an issue. It would be extremely de minimis, but due to our lot size, we're forced to seek the variance. And then additionally, given the stormwater offset we are providing, we feel that there will be no net negative effect on the public or the zone plan or zoning ordinances.
So, Paul, a number of those variants, right, minimum required lot size, lot frontage and width, even lot coverage to an extent, would you agree that they really are triggered here based on just the undersized nature of the lot and not the actual development being proposed?
Yeah, so given that undersized nature of the lot, yeah, it's forcing the majority of these with the exception of the use and the parking.
So in terms of those other variances, the use, well, we'll go with parking and then the variance required under Section 73D of the City of Cape May's Municipal Code. Can you talk about how under the C2 criteria, what purposes of zoning do you think would be advanced if the board were inclined to grant those?
So the purposes of zoning that we feel are advanced are this The addition will provide adequate light, air, and open space, being that the patio will not impede light, air, and open space and will provide an outdoor recreation space for the Cranes and their family. It will promote a desirable visual environment. The addition of the patio will be an aesthetic improvement to the home and will visually benefit the backyard and the neighborhood. We also feel we're providing sufficient space in appropriate locations. The proposed are sized in proportion to the home and the surrounding residential uses. And we also feel there could be an enhancement to the safety and/or general welfare, which again, being that net benefit with the increased stormwater capacity and controls, which could benefit the surrounding area.
And the purpose of the benefit that you could see it possibly arising out of that is reduced stormwater runoff, correct?
Right. So, and you know, I guess lower the impact of the initial storm that it has on the existing infrastructure in the street.
So Paul, in terms of the proposed patio paver area in the rear, can you talk about the type of pavers that we're intending to use there? Are they permeable in nature? And if so, can you give the board a
Yeah,
little detail on that?
so we are proposing a gapped paver system that will be built over a sand and stone base, and then gapped according to manufacturer's recommendations that will yield that semi-permeable condition.
Okay. So Paul, you put the positive criteria on the record that you believe would be advanced in terms of purposes of zoning. You get to now go over the negative criteria. I mean, do you see, if the board were inclined to grant this relief, is there any substantial detriment to the public good or the zone plan and ordinance that you could see befalling the city?
Again, given the semi-permeable nature, the addition of the stormwater, as well as, you know, given that it's an appropriately sized patio, it's not overly cumbersome, I feel that there would be no detriment to the public or to the zone plan and zoning ordinances.
All right. So cover what I'll call the C variances. But we mentioned we need a D2 variance here because
Right.
we are technically expanding a nonconformity, right? Would you agree to, before we get into that, would you agree with me that while we understand and agree that we need that, we're not actually expanding the residential dwelling which triggered the need for a D2 variance here, right?
Correct. There's no changes to the existing dwelling, the porch, the stairs, the access. This is just a patio in the backyard.
And it's completely accessory in the rear of the lot, not connected to the building, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's stated. Is it your professional opinion that the lot is able to handle the increased use that these patio pavers would present?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you don't see any negative detriment that could befall, again, the public good or the zone plan if this were granted?
None that we could find.
Okay. Paul, do you have a chance to look at Mr. Hurlis's review letter before we arrived this evening and presented testimony?
I did.
Okay. Any comments that you have to any of Mr. Hurlis's comments as
Yeah.
contained in this letter?
So as a condition of approval, he was requesting that we show additional grade information, which we would have no issue providing, just to ensure that the excess stormwater runoff is moving in the appropriate location, which is towards the front of the property. He also mentions requesting a waiver from a landscape plan, and we are not proposing any additional landscaping, but preserving what's there, and therefore we are seeking that waiver.
All right. Paul, anything else you'd like to add at this time before we turn it over to the board?
I mean, all the other, we have no issue with all the other comments in the report, and would abide by those. The one thing that I would like to add, I think that I kind of missed in my initial, is the size of the stormwater system. So presently, the lot coverage is at
58%.
Yeah, 58%, where only 40 is allowed. So we're actually reducing the.
I'm sorry.
40.
40,
40.
Where 40 is allowed. I'm sorry. So we're actually reducing the impervious cover by 9% by removing the existing concrete walkway, and then we're adding back essentially 11% with the 50% credit of permeable. So then we do believe there's a net benefit there in reducing that impervious hardscaping, replacing with this permeable patio, as well as the design criteria we used for the underground storage was 25% of the lot, where we're proposing an increase in 11% of permeable pavers. We're actually providing for 25% of storage, or 25% of the impervious on the lot per your ordinance. So there is excess stormwater capacity built into what we're doing. So even, we're not just handling the new patio, but we're handling essentially the garage, the patio, and the back portion of the home, the water that runs off from there. So we do believe it would be a significant net benefit to the surrounding area by absorbing all that stormwater.
Anything else you'd like to add, Paul?
I think that's it.
Mr. Chairman, that's all we have right now. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? I guess the only question I have is, did you feel it absolutely necessary to increase the lot coverage from 58 to 60%, whereas, it's, the requirement is 40%? So what was the benefit in your mind that you needed to do that?
So it's really in the way that they use the property. And this area that they want to convert to a patio is already being used, as kind of a hangout area with chairs. And so it was just that area is what they were looking to.
And how are they using that area, the paver area that's in the plans right in front of the garage?
Just as a hangout area, lawn chairs. I don't, just kind of a meeting area outdoors to enjoy the summer.
Okay.
I have a question. The setback for the side yard is 4 feet. The setback for your side yard is 4 feet, and you have 0.2 feet. To me, that's like really right on the property line. I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, that's a little invasive on the neighbor that's right there that you're sharing it with the fact that how are you going to prevent runoff from your pavers going into his yard?
Well, so the 0.2 reference there is the garage, but again, we are also running the paver to the property line, which is permitted if it's approved as semi-permeable. But beyond that, we are showing proposed grades, and with the fence, the proposed grades, we feel comfortable that we can direct the stormwater to the stormwater recharge system.
Okay, so Craig, so you're saying that they can go to the property line with that?
Yeah, and I was going to get into this during my
Okay, then.
ordinance. No, I'll touch on this
Okay.
topic. So the requirement is, so for patios, paved terraces, and decks, it says no impermeable surface may be constructed within 5 feet of any property line. So I made a point to alert the applicant that if they're going to go within 5 feet, it has to be permeable. So if it's permeable, it's permitted. If it's impermeable, it requires a variance. So in this case, they provided a permeable surface, so there's no variance that's necessary for the surface.
For being
And
a
the setback.
For the setback, because it says, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's the key criteria with regards to that design.
Okay. Then my other question has to do with parking. You're required to have 3 parking, you only have 2, and you're doing all this additional lot coverage, but you're not adding parking that is required to have 5 bedrooms.
So again, given that we're not changing the way the house is currently being used, and so that 2 parking space condition is presently existing on the lot, and we were just looking to have that continue. So we're not looking to exacerbate the parking. We're not adding more people or more cars.
But you're not looking to improve it either.
Correct. We did look at the possibility of moving the fence back, but due to the neighbor's fence, it gets really tight in there, and there's not a lot of room to push other cars back into the lot.
And Paul, with that, we were going over this, but is it your opinion that even if we were to try to do that, really wouldn't have adequate space to open doors, things of that nature? So adding that spot would actually create kind of more of an issue.
That was our concern, yes.
Well, there is, I see on the plans, it looks like there's a driveway for 2 cars. Is that consistent with 2 cars?
Yeah, 2 cars, that is consistent with 2 cars. And if you look, this plan does show those 2 parking spaces in yellow. It's a little light, but yeah.
This is 2 cars.
So there's 2 cars there.
Right here?
Yeah.
But not, this other one isn't, even though there's no, you go on the grass, is that what that is?
Yeah, so essentially they pull, one tire goes down the walkway and the other tire's in the grass.
What exhibit are you referring to, just so the record's clear?
It's just, Paul, that's the variance plan that you're referring to?
Yes.
Submitted with the application?
Submitted with the application.
Thank you.
Since the board's talking about this topic, when we look at these types of applications, when they exceed lot coverage, we always look to see if they can mitigate any. And in this case, they have a deficiency in the parking spaces. So they're deficient one space. So we always look to see if they can comply and make it, so it becomes a balancing test. If we ask them to comply with the parking, and it creates additional impervious surfaces that drive the lot coverage up. So is it more important to have the parking, or is it more important to comply with the lot coverage? Are we overutilizing the lot, or is the parking adequate? So I haven't heard any testimony from the applicants indicating, is the 2 parking spaces sufficient for the 5 bedrooms? Is there any parking issues in that neighborhood? Maybe if there's objectors here, we'll hear, about that topic. But, so, I did look at that. If the board is concerned about lot coverage, there is that existing concrete walkway or driveway to remain in the front can be redone and provided with pervious pavers that would create a 50% credit. So we would get some back. I don't know what that sum is, and maybe the applicant's engineers already evaluated that, but that, we might be able to do ribbons there and get some, become more conforming with regards to that design.
But can you explain what, is the first parking spot all concrete? Or is it half on grass?
It's
I'm
like-
not understanding what's grass and what's concrete.
Yeah, so I can.
First part is concrete.
Yeah, this portion is concrete, which a parking space is 9 by 18, where a car is typically in the 6 to 7 foot range. So even though as a legal parking space, the car would need to hang over into the grass, in function, a car actually fits on the concrete portion. But the legal size parking space actually goes beyond the concrete, which is probably a function of the age when it was constructed. It was before our current 9 by 18 requirement. So the 9 feet does go beyond that concrete. However, that concrete is sufficient to actually pull a car onto, if that makes sense.
Your typical car is about 6 to 6.5 feet wide. So the 9-foot provides you the ability to open the doors and have clear space to exit and not conflict with anything on the sides.
And Paul, just so your testimony is clear, right? What we talked about, what triggered the need for the 3rd parking spot was the amount of bedrooms that exist in this home, correct?
Correct.
And we're not in any way whatsoever expanding anything within inside the footprint of the home, right? We're not adding bedrooms or any other rooms.
No, we're not changing the use or the number of people that use the home at all.
So all that we're doing is adding or proposing to add this patio paver area in the rear, right? And that won't amount to any increased occupancy on the site, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the condition as exists now with 2 parking spaces is not really, well, yes, we need a variance, we're not exacerbating that condition that exists now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. In terms of potentially removing some of the concrete area in the front, would you agree with Mr. Hurlis that that would in fact reduce coverage and would make this a more, if enacted, would make this a more conforming lot by reducing what we're going over right now?
Correct.
And I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have any idea as to how much that may reduce the lot coverage figure in terms of the percentage?
Just, I did a little bit of quick math, and we could probably bring it down in the 4 to 6% range.
So it would still require a variance, but we'd be more conforming, and actually, if that number's true,
Under-
we'd be bettering the current existing condition.
Correct. We would be under what was currently there, and we'd be back below. But yeah, no amount of impervious, I think, could get us to 40.
That noted, Mr. Chair, we would be willing to do that in order to decrease the overall lot coverage. As a condition of approval, we'd agree to that.
I also have another quick question. I noticed Shade Tree said about a tree.
Yes.
Is that tree still there? Okay, 'cause I didn't see it in the pictures, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, so the tree is actually not on our property. It's on the neighboring property, but it's close to the fence. And when we looked at the tree, and given the permeable nature of the pavers, and we don't plan to excavate the roots, we do feel that the tree will continue to survive, and we have no intention of harming the tree.
Yeah, it seemed like their condition was not to adversely affect the root system of that tree, and we can
Yeah.
agree as a
I
condition.
just wasn't sure where that tree was. I
Yeah, so
couldn't-
it's actually catty-cornered to the lot on the other side of the fence. So when you look
Okay.
at it, it's difficult to see because the fence is obstructing the view.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Craig, would you like to do your review?
Certainly. I'd like to summarize my review memorandum dated February 24th, 2025. This is an application in the R2 Low Medium Density Residential District. As the applicant indicated, the only permitted residential use in this zone is single-family detached dwellings. This is a semi-detached dwelling, which is a side-by-side with a common party wall at the property line. So that is not a permitted use. So whenever you are expanding accessory uses related to a nonconforming use, that triggers the D2 expansion of a nonconforming use variance. Okay? I'll just roll right, they've indicated what their improvements are proposing, so I'm not going to bore you with that and rehash that. The completeness review, they requested 2 checklist waivers. I did support the granting of the waiver from the landscaping plan since they are not changing any of the existing landscaping. What I did recommend is that item number 19, which requires the additional topography be provided, because I cannot verify that the proposed stormwater system is going to discharge in anything in excess of that storm to the front of the property and not adversely impact any adjoining properties. So that should be a condition of approval, which is number 19 of that checklist. And therefore, I did recommend deeming the application complete. I'll roll into the summary of the variances that have been required. They've requested relief under both the C1 and the C2 criteria. The use variance, expansion of a nonconforming use. This is, once again, this is a semi-detached dwelling that's not permitted, and the accessory improvements expand that. So the evaluation should be whether the site can adequately accommodate that. With regards to the coverage, it's triggering a lot coverage variance. 40% is the maximum permitted. The plans indicate they're proposing 60%, where 58% exists, but I believe that the applicant has agreed to provide, and I want to make sure this gets on the record, to reduce the proposed coverage 4 to 6%. Is that what your testimony was?
That was my quick math, and
Okay.
we can.
So we're going to approve lot coverage to be determined, but it's going to be significantly less than the 60% that was proposed. And they're going to provide 2 ribbon paver strips that accommodate the 2 parking spaces. So that'll be 2 ribbons, and there'll be a grass strip in the center.
Correct.
Okay? Just so the record's clear. This is an existing non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot. There are nonconformities with regards to lot size. The lot size requirement is 7,500 square feet in the district, where 4,063 square foot exists. The lot width requirement is 60 feet, where 32.5 feet exists, as well as lot frontage, 60-foot requirement, where 32.5 feet exists. We already discussed the parking, but I'll rehash that for the record. There are 5 bedrooms in this unit. That, in accordance with the residential site improvement standards, 3 spaces are required, where 2 exist and 2 are being proposed. You've heard testimony, like we always reevaluate the parking standards whenever a variance is required. They've given testimony that if they were to push that back, there's a fence that's kind of preventing the 3rd parking space from being provided. If they were to push that back, it would create kind of a tunnel effect and not allow the doors to really open and create, a light, air, and open space issue. So that's why that is not being addressed. So those, I believe, are a summary of the variances that are required. Once again, I just point out, this is a use variance, so 5 affirmative votes will be required to pass this. I'm going to roll into the general review comments on page 5 of 6. These should all be conditions of approval. I've asked that the zoning table be revised to reflect the comments in this review memorandum, and we also have changes to lot coverage, so that should be included. I've asked for more detailed lot coverage calculations to verify those that have been permitted. We're going to be reevaluating that anyway, but we want to have an item-by-item breakdown on the plans provided. Item 3, we already talked about in our discussion comments. They're not providing an impermeable surface, so therefore that setback is not required. Item number 4, I pointed out an inconsistency. The photos of the existing parking improvements did not match the survey provided, so I would ask you to relook at that and make sure the plans are updated with that information. That'll all be reevaluated with regards to the lot coverage. Item number 5, this development is not considered major development. The applicant has provided a grading and drainage plan to mitigate the lot coverage overages. I would recommend that that system remain the same size. Any additional drainage that can be provided in that neighborhood is a benefit, and we just ask for that additional grading information. Item number 6 is our standard condition that they have to comply with Chapter 525, which is the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements, both during and after construction. We've asked for, under item number 7, we've asked for some additional stormwater detail be provided on the plans. Item number 8, we've asked for the parking calculations to be provided on the plans and indicate that there's a variance necessary for that. Item 9 is our standard condition that asks that the sidewalk be evaluated after construction and any sidewalk in poor condition be replaced to the satisfaction of the board engineer. Item number 10 is our standard condition that they have to tie the certificate of occupancy issuance to an acceptable inspection of those improvements to verify that they comply with any approval that the board gives. Item number 11 is compliance with the Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department, and that kind of has already been discussed. But I would just like to read those dates in the record. Public Works recommended approval with no comments, 3/10/25. Fire Department recommended approval with no comments, 3/24/25. And the Shade Tree recommended approval with the following conditions: that the paver work to not adversely affect the root system of the large tree in the rear yard. And you've heard testimony from the applicants indicating that they intend to do that. I think what is appropriate is that we locate that tree on the plan and show the root protection on the
Okay.
plan as a condition of approval.
No problem.
Item 12 is to comply with any and all necessary state, county, and local approvals. 13, the project is located in the historic district. HPC approval will be required, especially because we're changing the driveway in the front yard, so that should be a condition of approval.
Do have conceptual.
Okay, so we can go back and make sure that that's shown to them. 14, they have to comply with any and all applicable affordable housing requirements. And finally, should the board grant approval, they're required to revise the plans to meet the conditions of the board and submit the requisite number of sets to the board engineer for compliance review and approval. That is a summary of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Craig, I noticed you had a lot of questions about lot coverage on what was not on the plans. Is there, I guess my concern is that it's going to come in over the 60.
If it did, they would have to come back here.
Okay, that's-
So that's why I pointed
Okay.
out in my review, so that they're adequately advised that they have to make sure that whatever variances that we're granting here adequately accommodates whatever they're proposing to do.
Right, so it has to be below
So
56
now-
or 56?
So that should be discussed, but I think what we're approving is this plan with 2 ribbon strips of pervious pavers, and whatever that lot coverage is, which is going to be less than 60% and probably less than 58%.
Right, that's why I was hoping it'd be less than the 58%.
So, and you can, however you want to frame the resolution, but that's what the board is going to approve for lot coverage. And then that'll be put on the plan, and that's what we're going to hold them to.
Okay,
Okay, we don't
Thank
know exactly what that number is.
right, that's why I was just getting
So-
clarification.
And
there.
I don't,
The board
and,
is potentially approving an unknown.
Right,
But what you do know is what Craig indicated, and that is it's going to be less than.
Can you move your
what's being
microphone
proposed. Sorry. It's going to be less than what's being proposed, and subject to Craig's review that they comply with what they're actually agreeing to, and that is to have the ribbon stripping. and then they'll provide a new calculation as to what the lot coverage is. They'll provide that to Craig, he'll confirm, and then that will be the variance. If you were in the approving mode, that would be accepted. So the number's still up in the air, but it's going to be less than what's being proposed at 60.
So if I may, I think we can make something a little more concrete for you if it's acceptable. So Paul, you mentioned that it's your quick math that you think we could reduce lot coverage by 4 to 5% by doing what we're proposing to do, correct?
Correct.
Would you be comfortable as a condition, right now we're at 58 and we're increasing to 60 according to the plan.
Right.
Would you be comfortable with a condition that any lot coverage variance has to come in below the 58% that presently exists? In other words, we're still going to need a variance, but it's actually going to be better than what exists right now.
Yes, I would have no issue saying that we will be better than what presently exists.
So,
But that's only
That's
2%.
fine, provided that you
Well-
do what Craig asked you.
well,
to
we
do.
Yeah,
we
and we'll
still have to do.
Yeah, we'll still make sure,
That
but at a minimum, I think,
it's there.
you know,
More likely going to be that 4 to 5, but it gets us there.
So then we're getting a better situation than what exists now. So-
so yeah, net benefit on the coverage as well as a net benefit, I believe, with the excess oversized stormwater management system.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Craig? Okay. At this point, we'd like to open the meeting up to the public within 200 feet. You'd like to speak? At the podium. Name and address.
Please turn on the microphone, just press the button so it's green. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Scott Loper. I'm 1024 New York Ave, so I'm the adjoining neighbor.
Can you repeat your name, please?
Scott Loper, L-O-P-E-R.
You have
By
to
the
raise-
way-
You have to raise your right hand.
Oh,
Swear you on.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes.
Thank you.
I just had a question for the engineer, just to really kind of clarify something that he said. With me being adjoining, really the only concern I have is stormwater. It sounds like this has a pretty good chance of just improving things. But you mentioned that the stormwater system that you're installing is going to be designed to direct excess flow to the front of the property. Just want to clarify that'll be away from my side and up the driveway side of the subject property.
Correct. It'll be opposite of yours and down their driveway, essentially, is what we're proposing.
Okay.
Mr. Roper, are you on the attached side or the other side?
I'm the attached side.
Okay, thank you.
And it's, yeah. All right, thank you.
Within 200 feet?
Your address?
1028.
You please raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Will be. I basically have the same concern, that I'm on the opposite side from the Lopers, and I just have the concern, we've never had water running at all in our driveway, in our basement, and I'm just concerned about the possibility of water.
Paul, can I ask you to do one thing for me in this design? Provide positive outflow to the street. And what I like to see is that we connect a pipe to that system so that anything in excess will bubble out at the street, and so that there's no runoff going to any side yards.
Yeah, and I think given the reconstruction of the driveway,
And then you can put that right in the center of those ribbon strips, and it will
Right.
effectively discharge any excess water in the center, and that could possibly adversely impact the neighbors.
yeah, so it would give it a direct line, any overflow would overflow to the street and would also provide additional capacity.
Right.
So, no, we would have no issue complying with
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Good, okay, thank you. Anyone else within 200 feet? Tim?
My name's Tim Walsh. I live at 1022 New York Avenue.
Can you raise your right hand, please? You swear that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Most of my questions have been answered, but I do have a question with the survey. Can I approach this?
Take your mic with you. Take your mic with you.
There's two surveys. There's a survey that was completed and given with the plans, but this survey does not show the second concrete strip.
And that's just because it was on the neighboring property.
The first survey shows the pin on the corner of, do you have the original survey?
And that may.
I'm just trying to clarify this so there's no problems when it's
That
done.
may be to
and-
Craig's point that he had some concerns about the way it was drafted.
Paul, you seem like you're looking at a device. What is that?
iPad.
All right.
I was looking up the previous survey, which was submitted as part of the application.
Got it.
Somebody-
Is it the mechanical survey?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, Brennan.
that was the name.
There you go.
There you go.
Getting a little comfortable back there.
I was getting
Pin is
old,
the other
I
side.
couldn't
This
even
is-
see, you know,
this
I was
is the
reading.
strip.
Yeah, I see that.
Getting ready to put my phone
It's
on.
fully on the property here. This is concrete, this is concrete. It's fully on that property, and
All right,
part of it goes
so we can
over
have
to Hamilton.
a comprehensive record. Can you guys,
Yeah,
You
so.
don't need to know.
So looking at the McGonigal survey, what he's trying to show is that it shows more of that existing concrete strip on our side than what our plan shows.
Your plan shows no concrete on it.
But what I would suggest is that, you know, that driveway is being completely removed and replaced. So anything inside that property line will be removed and replaced with a permeable ribbon.
But won't this change your lot coverage and also change the calculations for the storm drainage? I just want everything to be right. I don't want,
Yeah,
you know,
but
I don't want water in my basement either.
I think even given whether that's this way or that way, I still feel confident that we can comply with what we've already
I didn't mean to walk away.
What's that?
I
I didn't mean to walk away from you.
You indicated that you'll be under 58%.
Correct.
So if for some reason your calculation is wrong, not by intent, but by error, you've got to comply with 58%.
Right.
So if you don't do it, then you have to return here and figure out your next move.
Right.
And the drainage will run to the front of the property like Mr. Hurlis said, right? There'll be a line.
They've agreed to that condition.
Another question about that pipe. The water goes in the ends of the pipe? It's the,
You should talk to the
I'm sorry,
design engineer.
the pipe that goes, that the drainage pipe?
So our original plan, the way we had designed it, was the stormwater coming off the patio would go to the inlet on the right side, and the inlet on the left side would be slightly lower than the one on the right side, and that water would bubble out. Given what we've just agreed to, which was piping the water all the way out front, I would probably change the design and hold those almost equal so we could run stormwater to both sides of that trench, and then the discharge would be at the street.
If those drains clog, what happens then? This house is pretty much empty all winter long.
Someone will have to clean the leaves off, yeah.
So someone's going to have to take that responsibility on, the leaves are going to have to be cleaned off, or otherwise the water's not going to go into the system and then cause running onto Scott's property.
That's already a condition of any application that we approve. That's why I refer to the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements both during and after construction. So they're required to maintain that system in a working condition, or the city has the ability to have them fix that.
Just wanted to get this all out there.
That's why I put that in as a
Right.
condition of all of our approvals.
And we don't plan to create like an exceptional low point there, but the water, any water that once that system fills up, that water can continue overland out of the property, consistent with what it's doing now. So we don't plan to change that condition and create an artificial low point that could flood the neighbors out. You know, we would direct water there, and then any water, once that fills up, would spill towards the street naturally the way it does now. So it's not our intention to create an issue, even if it were to clog. We still look to provide positive flow towards the street.
I just have a clarifying question for you. You're saying that right currently that concrete is on the property line or on the neighbor's property? Is that going to
The
be?
one survey shows the one concrete ribbon encroaching into Mrs. Hamilton's property, just a small slice of it.
And I believe,
0.9 feet is what's shown on the survey. So at the back portion of where it is, it's approximately almost a foot encroaching into the neighbor's yard. But they're going to remove all of that,
Even in the neighbor's yard?
even in the
Okay.
neighbor's yard. That's what's prescriptively been used as their parking
Okay.
space. They're going to remove all of that, put those improvements back on their property with the 2 ribbon strips that they've agreed to do.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Anyone else within 200 feet? Anyone beyond 200 feet? Okay, we're now closed to the public. All right. Rich, do you want to make a recommendation for the next one?
Yep, so I would recommend a motion
Mike?
for,
Question?
I would recommend a motion for the granting of the variances as contained on Craig's page 3 of his report. They include a use variance, lot size variance, lot width variance, lot frontage variance, lot coverage variance, as well as the parking variance, combined with Craig's review letter on page 5 and 6, amended to include a positive outflow to the street, which the applicant agreed to, as well as a condition that the applicant remove some of the concrete in the front of the building, put in 2 ribbon strips, and be under lot coverage of 58%.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
And remember, this is a D variance, so it requires 5 affirmative votes. Please state your reasons on the record when you vote.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Sheehan, seconded by Mr. Zexer. Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, our second application would be Joseph and Gail Stevenson, 233 Cape Heart Lane, Block 1031, lots 38.02 and 39.
So before we start, Sarah Stevenson had to recuse herself. I say that to Mr. Galzunas, so he knows that there's only 6 voting members. Do you wish to proceed?
We'll proceed, Mr. Barnes.
Introduce yourself and your party.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, my name is Ron Gelzunas, appearing on behalf of Jake and Gal Stevenson. To my right, property, of course, is located at 233 Cape Heart Lane. This is in the R2 zoning district. The proposal this evening is to construct a one-room addition to the home. The addition will be located where the existing roof deck is located. It will be located within the same footprint. This will require a variance for a vertical intrusion into the side yard setback area, and will also require a variance for the expansion of a non-conforming use. That non-conforming use is the existence of a second small cottage dwelling located on the property that is not in any way involved with this application. The applicant is also proposing some other major renovations to the property, including exterior renovations to the building, as well as some structural repairs to shore up the structure so that it lasts well into the future. Here this evening to provide our expert testimony to my left is Mr. Blaine Steinman, and of course, Jake and Gail to my right. If we could please have them sworn in.
I'll raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Steinman, if you could just briefly place your credentials on the record.
I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey.
And have you testified before various planning and zoning boards on other occasions?
Yes, I
Have you
have.
been accepted by an expert in the past?
I have.
Have you testified at this board in the past?
Yes, I have.
And they've accepted you as an expert.
They have.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, accept them.
Blaine, why don't you take us through the current conditions on the site, explain that to us, and then take us through your proposal.
Okay. The site, as shown on the P1 on our drawings, existing site is accessed through Cape Hart Lane. There's an existing structure on the right-hand side with parking to the left. The structure, it's an existing two-story structure with a one-story portion in the back. The one-story portion in the back is a garage with a deck above that accesses the second story of the front structure. If you continue down the driveway side, there's a structure to the left, which is an existing accessory apartment. And if you go towards the right, there are two other structures that are both used for storage. What we propose, which is on the same page on the drawing directly below it, are really no changes to the site. The driveway exists, the buildings in their locations and their size exist, and the only addition and why we're here is because when you go into the existing dwelling unit, on the first floor, there's currently 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and the stairs to get you to the second floor with a garage in the back. On the second floor, there's a kitchen, dining, living area with a bathroom and access to the deck. And what we propose is that the first floor to remain the same with the 2 bedrooms and the 2 bathrooms, the existing garage to be enclosed because you can't really get a car in there. There's a mechanical unit in there now that serves the residential unit, but that's sitting on the ground, which is below base flood elevation. We're going to raise that up to bring it into flood compliance, and we're going to enclose the area so that it can be used as storage as it is now, without the use of overhead doors, so it's better able to keep the storage area safer from the environment, because it's not really used as a garage. As you go upstairs, the second floor proposed, we're not really changing the main structure. That's the second floor of the living, dining, kitchen area with a bathroom, but we're enclosing the area that is currently a deck to become the new living area because the living, dining, kitchen area currently is too small for the family use.
Okay, tell us about the actual enclosure, what's going to happen as far as that's concerned.
Can you try to move that mic a little closer?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm having a hard time.
Can't hear them.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is that better? So we're going to do walls. We're going to redo the floor, bring the floor up flush to the floor of the second story structure, and we're going to enclose the perimeter of the deck with exterior walls where the railing currently is. On the back side, facing the backyard, will be windows. On the 2 sides, there will be no windows. It'll be accessed through the house, and also there's a current set of stairs that takes you up to the deck, and now that set of stairs will take you up to a door that leads you into the new living room.
So what's proposed to be inside of this new enclosed area?
It's just a living room.
And now, the existing second floor, I understand, is pretty small, and you can barely even accommodate just a handful of people, let's say, at a table.
Yeah, there's not much room for a table for dining. There's a small kitchen with an island a bathroom, and an existing living area that's also very small. So we're going to create a new dining area where the existing living area is, and a new living area where the existing deck is.
And the existing exterior deck, that's currently used, correct? That's, how does that consist of? Is that a fiberglass deck with a railing
Fiberglass
around
deck,
it?
yeah, it's a fiberglass deck with a railing around it.
And what activities happen on there? Is there a barbecue or a table, chairs, that sort of thing?
There's some furniture, I don't remember, maybe the client could tell you better. I don't remember seeing a barbecue up there, but it's just definitely just a sitting area.
Okay. So the manner in which the property is used, that's not really going to change any, is it? This area, this space on top of the deck is already being used in connection with the home.
Yes.
So the only thing that's going to change really then is that whatever happens on that exterior deck is going to now be within an enclosed space.
The sitting area, living area, that'll be, yes, it'll be inside with walls and a roof.
So in one respect, that will actually possibly be a benefit to the neighborhood, the adjoining properties, because you won't have outside activities occurring on an elevated deck.
That's correct.
And I think that sometimes that voices carry, even a regular conversational tone in the evening will carry pretty far. And you won't have that now that'll be enclosed.
You won't have the noise or visually, you won't be able to see in there because there's no windows on that side. It's currently, less than a foot to the property line on about half of it, so we're not proposing any windows on that side.
So the fact that you're not adding any bedrooms, you're not adding any bathrooms, you just have a space that's being utilized sort of as a living room area. It's outside versus inside is the only difference.
Correct.
And we have here a vertical intrusion into the side yard setback. Are you going up on the existing exterior bearing wall?
We are.
And what's the distance between that wall and the property line?
It's 0.9 feet.
And it's not going to go out any further than that? Are you proposing eaves on top of the roof?
There's a roof eave, but the roof eave will be cut back so that it does not exceed the property line.
And you've had some discussions, I believe, or interaction or input from the neighbor on that side as well concerning the roof eaves?
The client had interaction, and I was part of the email, so I could see what his comments and concerns were, and we've addressed those.
And when you look at the property that's next door to the east, that side yard area, what's the approximate distance between this part of the Stevenson house and the wall you're going to build and the structure that's located on the adjoining property?
The structure,
I think you scaled it at approximately 12 feet.
I think that's about what it was. Yeah, I didn't have that on a survey. But yeah, to his house, we're 0.9 feet to the property line, and then he's probably 11 or 12 feet or so from that same property line.
And then this part of the building and the addition actually goes past the portion of the rear property line, extends past the building, the adjoining building.
Correct.
In fact, a good portion of it, I think that building sits a little bit further forward.
Yeah, it sits further forward, and the property line, like you said, turns 90 degrees, so that only about half of the addition is 0.9 feet to the property line. The rest of it goes into the backyard of the property that belongs to this property.
And you said you're not proposing a window in that location?
We are not.
You're not. So do you see any kind of negative impact flowing on to the adjoining property, the property to the east?
No, I don't. I know his concern was that he didn't want the roof overhang or water runoff because of the roof overhang. And as I said, we've addressed that. We pulled the roof overhang in and put a gutter down the side of it, and the gutter is also within the property line where we're adjacent to the property line.
So you've considered that issue, and you feel that it's adequately addressed?
I believe so. We did exactly what he asked us to do. He's an architect, and he actually proposed this solution, and we just said we would follow it.
And you agreed with that as
I
well?
agree with-
And you were
yes.
satisfied with that?
Yes.
And do you believe that there's adequate space buffering between the two structures, which was approximately 12 feet?
Yes, well, again, I mean, it's an existing structure, and it's been there a lot longer than his structure, but yes, there is about 12 feet between the two structures, so it's not as though they're right on top of each other.
Now, in addition to enclosing and making this new room, you have some other improvements that are happening here. I think siding, windows. Could you go into a little detail about the other improvements that will result from this?
We did some cosmetic as well as structural improvements to bring the house into code compliance and make it more energy efficient, and it has been through an approved HPC approval already.
Now, this is an historic structure, correct?
Yes.
So those structural repairs you're making are actually helping preserve this structure well into the future?
They are.
And also the design features, the new windows, siding, roofing, that sort of thing, that also advances the historic character of the home itself, the structure?
Yes.
And also the historic district?
Yes.
And the neighborhood in general?
Correct.
And that's to the general, well, those are special reasons, right? The advancement of the historic district and the general welfare?
They are, yes.
And that promotes all of those factors, including a desirable visual environment, which I guess is the aesthetics and visual appearance of the whole place.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's all advanced. So now the second variance that we come to, the expansion of the nonconformity, which we have a cottage, second cottage on the property. And that's a very small cottage, right? Your floor area ratio on that is something exceptionally small. I believe if we look at the zoning chart, we have a floor area ratio we start with of 0.16 for the home, and then I think 0.038 for the cottage.
Mm-hmm.
So you're adding just a small amount. We're going from 0.16 floor area ratio on the principal house to 0.186 for Unit 1.
Correct.
That's not a lot, is it?
No.
In fact, for the size of the property, we're very undersized for what could be on that
For
property.
what's permitted, correct.
So considering that, the expansion, can the site accommodate the expansion?
Well, I believe it can, yes. Like you said, it's well under the floor area ratio.
And all of your other bulk numbers are lower than what's allowed. The lot coverage, you're
Yes.
under that,
Yes.
34%. Building height, you're only at 24.2 feet, you're allowed 35 feet.
Correct.
And we essentially just have a big lot and two very small dwellings on it.
That's correct.
And the area we're enclosing is already,
It's already,
the floor
building
area is
coverage.
already there and it's already utilized.
It's already building coverage,
And
correct.
so those factors, do they lead you to conclude that there's no additional intensity of use, there's no really material expansion of the nonconformity?
Yeah, there's no expansion onto the lot or the use of the structure. It's the same number of bedrooms, family, same family. So it's just changing the use from a deck to an enclosed living room.
And there's other existing nonconformities on the property, but none of them are going to be exacerbated here.
Correct.
And for instance, the parking that's provided is 4 spaces, 2 spaces for each unit,
Yes, that's correct.
and no additional parking is needed.
No.
And from that use variance, that expansion of that nonconforming use, in everything that you've testified to, do you see any negative impact on the neighborhood or the public?
No, I do not.
And considering that we just have a one-room addition here over the garage, do you see any substantial detriment to the zone plan, the R2 zoning plan or the zoning ordinance resulting from this?
No, I don't.
In fact, it's a bit unique situation, the way the lot's configured with the existing house where it is and the other property, the L shape of it and whatnot.
It's very unique, yes.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Steinberg?
I have a couple questions. Is the house going to be raised?
No.
Okay. I was a little confused there when you said, they talked about 6 feet elevation. That's why I was asking.
No, the house is an existing historic structure. I don't think there's any way to raise it.
Okay. And there's 2 cottages in the back, a habitable one and a non-habitable one?
There's 3 buildings. One is an apartment and the other 2 are structure. 3 buildings that are accessory buildings besides the main structure. So there's 4 buildings total on the lot. The one that we're working on, which is where they live, and then 3 buildings, like I said, one is a cottage and the other 2 are storage buildings.
Okay, so they're not finished off. The other 2 buildings aren't finished off.
Not as far as I know, they're not finished off, are they? No, they're just the 2 other buildings besides the apartment. They're just storage, correct?
Yeah, they've been
I mean,
there
we didn't
probably-
go in and we weren't doing anything to them.
Now, you're removing the garage door, correct?
Correct.
That's one thing I have an issue with, because now it's almost becoming an improved space by removing the door.
Okay.
Okay, let me shed a little light on that. Jake, that area we're calling a garage connected to the house. To your well, first of all, how long have you owned the house?
8 years.
To your knowledge, what was that space used for when you purchased the house?
When we purchased the house, it was all, they had the walls painted with kind of like decorative paint, and it was just an all-purpose room where we've had, because our...
Was it used for just storage?
No, not originally. I mean, it is storage, but then it was also used, I guess, for parties, things like that.
It's being called a garage.
Right.
What's your knowledge about whether that is a garage space or not?
If you read the historic report, it does indicate that the garage use was discontinued in the 1960s, I believe, in the historic report. Additionally, it doesn't have the proper turnaround radius to back in and out. There's also a large tree right by it. So, I mean, it must have at some point became impractical, and, it hasn't been used as a garage. And again, if you look at the historic report, it does indicate the 1960s.
Yeah, just having a garage, then it's, a garage door is considered a garage, for me,
Yeah.
garage. Once you remove the garage, to me, it becomes another room, a habitable area.
Are they
Well-
heated spaces?
It is heated. It does have an air conditioning in there. It has a floor. But, I mean, our living room is 7 by 10. Our kitchen is so small, we have a 4-seat dining room table. So we've had Christmas dinners in there, Easter dinners in there, Christmas parade parties in that room with picnic tables. So we have used it other than garage.
But right now, it is storage in there.
Yeah.
And
Right now,
it
it's
has
loaded
the
with junk.
HVAC units in there, the hot water heater.
That becomes habitable space if you're using it.
Well,
You know,
It's almost like having an outdoor patio with the cover over it. It's pretty
Right,
much.
but it's supposed to be a garage. A garage is not to be used for habitable. We just went through this last month.
Yeah, we could, I mean, the garage door can stay,
Yeah.
just make it
That's
an
fine.
appropriate garage door for the historic timeframe.
There'll be no other work done on any of the other structures at this time?
No. No, this is enough, believe me.
I mean, my concern is that if you're going to be using that garage as habitable space, is it going to be another bedroom? Does that change the parking requirements, habitable, that's,
You know,
We do have 6 parking spaces as it is, so I don't know that would.
but that does include the place in the back for parking?
Yeah,
How many bedrooms are in the place in the back?
it's 1.
Just one?
yeah, it was a converted garage. It was, it's very
No.
tiny, wasn't it? Or Coast Guard housing or
Yeah,
something?
it was Coast Guard.
But it's been there, again, 60 years, 80 years.
Is that what the history was? It's a
think-
very unique site.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks like there's
Jake, why
4
don't you-
cottages on there?
Yes.
Why don't you give us the history of the buildings that you've researched it a little bit,
Yes, yes.
correct?
Next door, yeah.
At one time, that area along Cape Island Creek, which has since been put underground and covered, was a series of barns, including the Congress Hall stables. We're the last one left. It's a post and tenon barn. It's 21 by 24. It's a little square barn. Everything's crooked in it. And, it was converted to a house kind of like half-heartedly, I think, in the 80s. And we're trying to bring it back to represent the cultural history of that. It's a barn. We're going to make it look like a barn because that was part of Cape May's history. And so, I mean, our intent is to just, when people come down the street, they're going to say, oh, wow, there was a barn here, you know, and it's not just any other house. The other buildings are there. One was an ammo dump from the old Camp Wissahickon, now the Coast Guard base. The other one was a gas station on Washington Street at Union. And my neighbor Ruth Leo says the one that's occupied now was a garage at one time.
So Ruth Leo, she lives to the west of you.
Yes, the left from the front.
Now, you've spoken to her about this, and she's related to the original owners of the property?
Yes.
That accumulated all the grounds
Yes,
and buildings?
Ruth's late husband, John, his mother at one time owned all those parcels.
And how long have those, to your knowledge, speaking with her through the history of this, have those sort of, that collection of buildings existed?
You know, at least 60 years, if not longer, maybe 80 years.
And the one is a habitable cottage?
Yes.
And that you have a mercantile license for?
Yes,
and
we
you-
maintain that.
You rent that?
But for the past 4 years, we've had our daughters living in it. So, you know, we're not using it as a rental property currently.
One of those buildings was a guardhouse from the Naval Air Station?
Ammo shack.
An ammo shack.
Yeah, and
That-
it's so
that's
tiny, you couldn't use that for anything.
That's the equivalent of an actual
Correct.
shed at this point.
Yes.
And the other building directly behind you, that was some type of structure, what was that?
That was the gas
A
station.
gas
It was a
station.
gas station, you know, probably at the turn of the century when cars first came out on Washington Street and Union. And it was moved from there onto my site.
Now, that was habitable at one time,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, we have,
There's-
you know, anecdotal that people did live there.
Well, you go in there and it's
It's,
a bathroom with this,
some of the I guess the vestiges, you know, toilet flange, pipes, gas lines, all that still exists, but
it's all torn out,
yes.
and you have no intention of doing anything with it at this point. What are you using it for now?
It's loaded wall to wall. I mean, it
Storage.
is, it's, you can't even move in there. I mean, we may be a little bit like hoarders, but we have a lot of stuff.
Right. So that's the history of those little cottages. It is very unique. You go
Right.
back there, if you ever have the opportunity, it's very unique.
I'm just trying to get a whole, like, we have this habitable floor area expansions into different structures on lots, and it's been very prevalent before this board, and the zoning officer and myself deal with this all the time, enforcement issues and everything. So I'm just trying to make sure that whatever we approve, we know what's going to be on this site.
Right.
Whether it's historically there, and if you're not touching the other buildings, if it's historically there, I think that this approval should at least document it so that, now, what was the building that you said that you have Thanksgiving dinner in, or?
That was the current garage, because we.
The garage, okay.
The upstairs is so tiny. we-
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The garage for the principal structure?
Yes.
Okay,
Attached.
gotcha.
Which
Okay.
looks like it was an addition and has a garage door. But I just asked Mr. Steinman
About
to give
20
us a
by
square footage.
16, so maybe 380.
Yeah. That would still comply with the floor area ratio if that was.
We're well under.
So that's why
Yeah.
I want to make that case, is like, if that's not an issue,
It's
You know,
it's below base flood to do
we have a
anything
very
new to it.
small dwelling here, and but it's below flood elevation.
It's below flood elevation.
Okay.
I mean, we meet the parking, even if it was
Right.
habitable, usable space.
Okay.
Parking's not a
We do
problem.
get
Floor
mice
area
and
ratio
things
is
like
not a
that in
problem.
there because of.
Okay, so it's not habitable, but
We can't
it's
raise
not
it up.
unlike anyone with a huge family throwing Thanksgiving dinner out in their garage,
Basically, yes.
right? So
Yeah.
the issue is whether the door should remain or not, and whether the board
And-
feels comfortable with that.
With this
Okay.
addition, we won't need to do that anymore.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of missing information I wasn't registering. Thank you.
Right, and that garage door, I think historically, that is an addition to the barn. That probably shouldn't even really be there, I think.
I don't think it's part of the original structure. Jake probably knows more about it than I do.
And then I think there was one more confusing point when you were talking about elevating something. Were you talking about the height of the deck the rooftop deck to bring that up to be consistent with the floor, so you could walk.
That was
in
just
without a
raising it
step?
up a few inches so that
Okay.
there's no step down,
I
yes.
think there was some confusion there about raising something,
Oh,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what you were talking about
We were
raising.
just going to remove the fiberglass.
Can you grab the mic, please?
Mike.
Sorry. So the rooftop deck sits a few inches lower than the floor, the second floor,
Yes,
and so you have to bring it up so you're not tripping, you don't have a tripping hazard.
right, so the floor is
That's what's
consistent.
up.
The existing floor will be consistent in the new living room.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Steinman? Right this close.
So it looks like you got HBC approval, or do you still have to go through that process?
We do have HBC final.
Okay, final. All right, thank you.
Yeah, that was included as Exhibit C in the application. Resolution 2024-41.
Any other questions?
Just clarification, if they remove the garage door, then it becomes habitable space,
They have plenty of space. Yep, go ahead.
right?
It's not really habitable space.
Well, that's how we consider it, because it's heated and air conditioned, and the garage door is gone, then it becomes habitable space.
Yeah, I think the interpretation of our zoning code would suggest that it is habitable space.
You're getting very close to it, if it not.
Yeah, I think that you should present it that it's, and I don't know whether you're going to concede the garage door or not, but I believe without the garage door, it is habitable space. I think you can make that case.
I think-
Now,
yeah.
is it going to create an overage? Do you know what that calculation is? You're at 0.16%, proposing 0.224, and that's including both the cottage and the principal structure?
Yeah.
So I'm doubting that,
We're not going to need a variance for exceeding that, the
and it's
permitted.
up to the
Can you
board.
please speak into the mic? I'm sorry.
It's not going to require a variance for more than what's permitted.
I just don't want this becoming a future habitable space issue moving forward.
Mr.
Or
Engineer, we're willing to
exact-
do whatever
Yeah.
the board suggests.
I think.
I'm just trying to make it clear so when they go for the CO, they know what
Right.
is there.
Right.
So I think it should be presented that it's existing habitable space or proposed habitable space with the removal of the door. Is that?
No, Mr. Hurlis, I agree. I mean, look, they purchased the property in this configuration. The garage use itself was abandoned sometime in the 60s, according to the HP survey. That sort of puts it in this sort of gray zone.
Gray
Well, it's a
area.
garage and it's abandoned, but it's being used how? In various different ways.
Right.
I think, Mr. Hurlis, you're correct. We could resolve that now and clear it up and simply call it what it's been used as, and that's habitable space. And we're still so vastly under the floor area ratio that's permitted. This is a 9,867 square foot lot.
Right.
And we're talking about adding 380 square feet. I guess we divide that by
380 to-
9867,
Correct.
0.0385 additional floor area ratio,
That's
which is a tiny
de
amount.
minimis, right.
It is, it is de minimis,
So-
given
Yeah,
the
so-
scale of the lot.
I just want to make sure that we approve this and that there's no issues moving forward and we know what animal that we approved. So it becomes an enforcement issue, so if we can get that clarified, and I don't believe that it increases the intensity of the use there or creates any more additional adverse impacts that could be considered. But, so I just like clarity, especially with this issue that the board and the city have been dealing with for so long. Okay?
Unless they put another bedroom down there.
Right. Well, that would create a parking issue, so we'd have to address this. Okay? Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions? No? Craig, would you like to do your review?
Sure. I'd like to summarize my January 8th, 2025 review memorandum. This is an application in the R2 low medium density residential district. Once again, the only permitted residential use in this district is single-family dwellings. Now, that being said, you're only permitted to have one principal use on each lot. Now, that cottage is considered we don't have a definition of cottage. It's considered additional single-family dwelling, and the other two outbuildings are storage buildings. Okay? All right, so rolling into the completeness review, the applicant requested waivers from items 8, 13, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 31, and 33. And based on the nature of this application, I did support waivers from all of those items. I did ask for additional calculations for lot coverage to be provided on the plans. Item number 13 should be provided as a condition of approval.
And that will include the garage area, right?
Well, that's not that would be a calculation of the floor area ratio or the habitable space.
Right.
So yes, we would include that. So that's a different animal than what's included in my review, but we'll add that as a condition of approval too. So we would ask for the floor area ratio and habitable space calculation will include the garage.
Okay.
Is that okay? All right. So that, based on that recommendation, I did recommend deeming the application complete. With regards to the variances that are being requested, so this is an expansion of a existing non-conforming use, not because it's a cottage or whatever we're calling a dwelling, it's the principal dwelling, but because it represents a second dwelling on a lot. Any expansion of anything on that site represents an expansion of a non-conforming use, very similar to what I described in the previous application. Okay? So the addition to single-family dwelling number 1, which is, as it's indicated on the architect's plans, that creates the necessity for the board to grant a use variance under the D2 criteria. For that, once again, it requires 5 affirmative votes to pass that. I'll just touch on the other bundle of, so this is an existing non-conforming structure. It has an existing non-conforming structure setback with regards to Cape Hart Lane. 25 foot is required, 19.8 foot exists. That's not being changed. The lot frontage does not meet the minimum requirement of 60 feet. 50 foot is the existing condition. The habitable ground floor area. So in this case, they're way under the minimum. So there's a maximum and a minimum in Cape May. So these are extremely small structures, which is not really promoted or encouraged or approvable under the existing zoning criteria. So obviously there's 4 very small structures. 392 square foot exists for the cottage, and that's going to remain as 392. So that's an existing nonconformity. The principal structure is getting larger, 596, and that is being increased to 916, which goes from a non-conforming situation to a conforming situation. So the addition actually makes that conforming. That's a positive. The rear yard setback for the cottage is required to be 25 feet, where 2.3 feet exists and is proposed. There's no changes there. The side yard setback, and this is a vertical expansion in that setback, 5 foot is required on that side. 0.5 foot is an encroachment, and there will be a 0.5 foot encroachment that exists. However, you've heard testimony from the applicants indicating they will pull back those eaves so that it doesn't encroach on the neighboring property. So that is more conforming. However, it does still require a setback variance. Okay? And then finally, I just asked, and I just indicated in my chart, you provided a conforming lot coverage. It's not really up close to the maximum permitted. However, there was no detailed calculations on there, so we would ask that that be added to the plan just so that can be confirmed. and the floor area ratio will change based on our discussion of the garage being habitable space if the garage door is removed. And then finally, just detailing our checking of the parking. For both units, there are 4 parking spaces required where 4 exist. So that's a summary of all the variances.
Craig, quick question.
Sure.
Is there a reason why you don't include the other structures on the lot?
They're not being touched, and it just gets too convoluted. They're accessory structures,
Okay,
they get evaluated kind of like sheds do.
Uh-huh,
So they
okay.
have a reduced setback requirement, typically 5 foot from any side yard or rear yard is the requirement. The one is non-conforming, but I just left, to keep our report concise and reviewable without creating too many issues, I omitted that.
Okay, I just didn't know how, for,
It's existing non-conforming situation, and they're not touching that structure, so I left it alone.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Any other questions with regards to the variances? All right. Under the general review comments, these shall all be conditions of approval. So they already talked about this, and this is the eaves encroachment in the abutting lot. So they've indicated that they've worked it out with the neighbor. They are going to pull back those eaves. They're providing a gutter so that there's no stormwater discharge onto the adjoining lot. And I've also asked for some setback information to be provided on the plan, just so it's clear. Okay? Item number 2, the survey created a little bit of confusion because the survey indicates that there are 4 dwellings on the lot. The Cape Land surveying says 1-story frame dwelling, 1-story frame dwelling, 1-story frame dwelling, all in the rear with a 2-story frame dwelling in the front. So we're going to let the architectural plans govern because that's only showing what you described, and just note that that survey is inaccurate. And there's no habitable spaces permitted in those structures. So that's being agreed to. Okay? Item number 3, this is within a flood area, so you have to comply with Chapter 258 flood damage protection for the new construction. Item number 4, we always ask that the zoning table is revised to reflect the comments in the review memorandum and whatever the conditions that the board sets. 5 is the applicant shall verify that the proposed improvements will not result in grading or drainage issues. If that occurs, then a grading and drainage plan should be required and submitted for review and approval to the board engineer. You also have to comply with Chapter 525, which is the minimum stormwater management and grading requirements both during and after construction. Item number 6, a landscaping and vegetation plan was not provided. We would just ask you to confirm that all the existing trees and landscaping will be preserved.
We're not going outside of the footprint of the building. Nothing will be touched.
Thank you so much, and just add a note on the plan confirming that. We evaluate the sidewalk on any application like this. There is no sidewalk existing on Cape Heart Lane. Cape Heart Lane is extremely narrow. It is a 20-foot right-of-way. It cannot accommodate sidewalk, and therefore I don't recommend any sidewalk being provided on this site. Items 8 is our standard recommendation that they have to provide an inspection escrow, and that the CO is tied to an acceptance of the improvements. 9 is compliance with the Shade Tree Commission, Fire Department, and Public Works Department. We did receive reports from them. Shade Tree Commission recommended approval with the following conditions, and this is a brutal one with the handwriting, so give me a second. There are 4 large elm trees located on the property which will need to be protected as per our ordinance. One of the elms is of a size to be considered a landmark tree. One dead ginkgo, is that what that is? That was the word I was having.
Ginkgo.
Okay, ginkgo and crepe myrtle can be removed. Are those acceptable?
Yes, and, just as anecdotally, that one Dutch elm that is a legacy tree.
Okay.
We had 2 other huge ones that were right next to it. And Easter Monday, about 5 years ago, a straight-line wind came through, blew the roof off of Congress Hall, and blew both of them down.
Gotcha.
Both down.
Yeah.
I lost my roof in that storm.
And it cost a lot of money to get them babies out of there.
I'm very familiar with
Yeah.
that.
Just lucky they
I'm
fell
very
the right
familiar
way.
with that storm. so.
Yeah, they fell into the one that's standing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but they were 250-year-old trees.
Okay.
Yeah, they're-
All right, so that takes care of item number 9. Item 10 is our standard condition that they have to comply with any and all other necessary state, county, and local approvals. Item 11, they have provided evidence that they have HPC approval. Item 12, they have to comply with any applicable affordable housing requirements. And finally, item 13, should the board grant approval, they have to revise the plans consistent with the board's conditions and submit those plans to the board engineer for review and approval. That's a summary of my report. Happy to answer any questions the board has.
No questions for Craig?
We don't take any exception to any of the conditions.
All right. At this point, we'd like to open the meeting up to the public. Anyone within 200 feet that would like to comment?
I'm James Lee. I live at 232 Perry Street, which is behind the property. I support everything they...
Please raise your right hand.
That's where you want.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee, what was the address? I'm sorry.
232 Perry Street.
Thank you.
I support everything they want to do. I knew the previous owners very well, and anything they want to do to improve that structure in the neighborhood is wonderful. My fear has been that someone other than they would buy it, tear everything down, and fight with you all about a mega whatever, because it's a big lot, and with the right lawyers and whatever, who knows what they could do. So they're doing what I think is really good for the whole community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else within 200 feet? Beyond 200 feet? Okay, we'll close it to the public. And Jeff, you explain recommendations and motions to be made?
Sure. We recommend a motion for the variances as contained in Craig's report on page 4 that require a use variance, a building setback line variance, lot frontage variance, then we'll have a little ground floor area variance, rear yard setback variance, side yard setback variance, and non-conforming structure on the non-conforming lot, as well as Craig's comments in 5 through 6 of his report. On his completeness review, there was a issue as relates to, I believe, number 13 that required some revisions by the applicant. Lastly, and if I'm wrong, you can tell me, the garage door, I believe, is actually being removed, and it's being considered a habitable space per the resolution.
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Remember, it's a D variance. It requires 5 affirmative votes. I ask that you put your proofs on the record when you vote.
I make a motion?
I'll second.
Mary Beaton.
Ms. Sheehan motions, Mrs. Notch seconds. Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone on the board. This has been a long process, and thanks for your kind consideration.
Good luck, Jane.
I'd just like to thank the applicant for actually talking to their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Leo.
And I always make
and-
sure Ruth knows what we're doing.
Yeah.
Every time I go there, the inspections there, Mrs. Leo grabs me and chews on my ear.
Jeez.
I try and hide from her.
All right, our third application is Jason and Cinda Cleary. I think I would have got that right. 501 Hughes Street, Block 1049, Lot 1001. This is an appeal from the HPC.
1 second. Just give me 1 second, okay? Thank you. Okay. Okay, can you talk now?
Can everybody hear me okay?
Working.
I can just barely hear him. Who's that?
Chris Gillen-Schwartz.
Oh.
He was otherwise we weren't
I
coming
think I'm
back
gonna
till like
try you
July,
on
so.
Okay, so give it a try now, okay?
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Loud, not so clear.
Okay, give it one more check.
Okay. I'm going to try and stay out of the way of this meeting so you can all just tell me when I need to talk.
Okay, just one more time, okay?
Okay. Karen, can you hear
That
me?
doesn't work. It has to be on the speaker.
Just turn the volume down?
Okay.
Did you?
All right, I'll turn the volume down.
Just move it a little bit away, that
Yeah.
might be why you're getting
Away.
reverberation.
Okay. Okay, one last time, and then I'm going to step away and let Mr. Barnes take over.
Okay. Good evening, Jeff, and everybody else. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Good to go, Mr. Chairman?
We're good to go.
All right. Good evening again, board members. John Amenhauser of the DeWeese Law Firm. Here this evening on behalf of the appellants in this matter, Jason and Cinda Clewe. The subject property of this appeal is 501 Hughes Street, identified as Block 1049, Lot 10.01. As the board is aware, this is an appeal from a denial of this application by the HPC. The application was dated September 27th, 2024. The HPC hearing that was conducted was on November 25th of 2024. The subject of that application originally, and I'm going to go through a time frame just to make it clear for everybody in just a second, but the subject of that application before the HPC on November 25th was related to a condition of planning board approval to go back to that body as it related to proposed gates and fences on the subject property. The original HPC approvals and planning board approvals contained much more in terms of development than just those things. They included in-ground swimming pool. They included patio pavers in the rear of the building on this property, as well as some landscaping. And I'm going to get into more detail now, but just to frame it, there was a very, very limited scope of re-review by the HPC that was warranted in this case and that was ordered by the planning board. The opinion of the appellants is that the HPC grossly exceeded the authority that was provided to them on remand and considered this application completely anew after previously having provided approval of the entirety of the application. So to go through a time frame as to how we got here tonight. So originally, an application was filed by the Clewes to the HPC on March 25th of 2024. The application that was sought, or that was submitted, sought approval for the installation of an in-ground swimming pool, patio pavers, newly proposed landscaping, and at the time, a black aluminum fence surrounding the pool area in the rear yard. Again, March 25th of 2024 is when that was submitted. On April 3rd of 2024, just about a week or so later, an email was sent to the applicant and to myself by the board secretary of the HPC. She advised through email, and this was copied, it was included as, I'll call it Sub-Exhibit B to Exhibit A of our application. So Exhibit A is voluminous. It's a legal brief that I authored along with exhibits to it. The entirety of that was Exhibit A. You'll see the sub-exhibits attached to that. So Sub-Exhibit B was an email from the board secretary, HPC secretary, to myself and to the Clewes indicating that the proposed black aluminum fence was inappropriate in the historic district, and the HPC requested a plan with a wooden fence be submitted or that a full commission hearing would be required. In other words, submit a wooden fence plan along with the other items that you'd sought for development, or if you don't, we're going to require you to go before the full commission. That's directly from the HPC secretary to us. May 15th of 2024, so approximately a month later, a revised application was submitted to the HPC with a wooden fence plan included. So this revised application included a wooden fence plan, an in-ground swimming pool, patio pavers, newly installed landscaping. All of the same items from the first application with the conversion of the aluminum fence to wooden.
What was the height of the new wooden?
So that fence at the time was 6 foot in height that was proposed or presented to the HPC for approval. Thereafter, on the same date, so we submitted May 15th, and board secretary sent an email on the same date indicating that And this is in pertinent part, but again, the entirety of the email is sub-exhibit C to exhibit A in our application. She stated, HPC asked for a plan for a wood fence or a full commission hearing will be required. She went on to then state, a submission for an alternative wood fence would have been sufficient to avoid a full commission hearing and advance the application for re-review. Lastly, she goes on to state, I will submit the revised application for re-review. The next meeting of the HPC Review Committee is scheduled for Tuesday, May 28th. In other words, she was telling me directly, and had been, this is the second occasion, that if we submitted a plan for a wood fence, they'll review it in committee. That's what they did. May 28th, 2024, the revised application submitted on the 15th of that month was reviewed in review committee by the HPC, and the application was approved in its entirety. It's for an in-ground swimming pool, it's for a 6-foot wooden fence, for the newly proposed landscaping, and for the patio pavers that were proposed.
That was approved in review.
That was approved in review on the 28th of May. Sub-exhibit A is that HPC approval, the application as well as the stamped approval on the bottom with the date on it. So at this point, the HPCs had two different bites at the apple, from initial submission to May 28th when we were approved, to tell us that they had an issue with what we were proposing or that we had to go to full review committee. They didn't do it. In fact, not only did they not do it, they made it clear to us that if we submitted what they wanted, we can be reviewed in committee and would be. And that's exactly what happened. Thereafter, June 7th of 2024, that is the date that after obtaining the HPC approval on the 28th of May, we got together with the architect that was thereafter retained by the Cleweys to draft a site plan. They expended the cost to do so, and we submitted an application to the City of Cape May Planning Board, knowing that we had HPC approval in place for what we looked to do. June 17th of 2024, the HPC's full committee met for their regular monthly meeting. If you look at sub-exhibit D to exhibit A, that includes the agenda that was set to be worked on that night by the HPC. On the cover of that agenda are all of the applications between their May meeting and June meeting that had been reviewed and approved or denied in committee. On that list is the Clewey application. This is exactly how it reads right on the cover page of the agenda. It says Clewey, 501 Hughes Street, 1049-10.01, non-contributing, pool, patio, and fence. Again, they made it clear to any member that wasn't part of the review committee that this was approved in committee, and here are the items that were approved. This was part of the application. It says it right on its face that there was a pool approved at that time.
That's a 6-foot fence.
With a 6-foot fence. Now, during the actual meeting, right, I just went over what was on the agenda, but then during the meeting of the HPC, there was it came up as to the approval of those applications in committee by the full body at that time. There was a motion made by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Becker, and this is in the minutes, and then unanimously approved by the entirety of the HPC, all of those applications in review that were approved or denied the month prior. It was a third bite at the apple that the HPC had to tell us there was an issue with this, to remove it from those items that were approved in review, or to otherwise say, I can't approve these, through the minutes here. I can't approve this because it shouldn't have been done in review committee. It wasn't done then either. So 3 different times they had the chance to do so or tell us there was an issue. They failed to do so. After that, August 27th of 2024, the applicant's planning board application that I had mentioned we'd filed back on June 7th was heard by that body. Unanimously, the board that evening approved us by a vote of, I believe it was an entire board, it was unanimous, I believe it was 9-0, that it was a site plan application without any required variance relief. They approved it unanimously that night. That was for the installation of the pool. That was for the installation of patio pavers, landscaping that was approved. The only condition that the board put in the resolution that night, and the resolution is attached also as sub-exhibit E to exhibit A, was that 6-foot fences are not approved in front yards. This is a corner property, essentially 2 front yards. This is the rear of the structure, but technically a front yard. So what they said was, we're not inclined to approve anything over a 4-foot fence in that area. Go back to the HPC solely as it relates to gates and fences to ensure that they're okay with that design at 4 foot. That's exactly what we did. So on September 27th of 2024, an application was filed with the HPC seeking amended approval solely as it related to the gating and fencing. We made clear in the body of the requested relief that we did not seek to otherwise alter or amend the prior approvals related to the in-ground swimming pool, the patio pavers, or any other approvals that were granted by the Planning Board and HPC earlier. Not only did we make it clear in our application narrative, but the Planning Board made clear as to what the authority they had for re-review was, only gating and only fencing. The other thing that we changed through that amended application to make it even more palatable, as we saw it for the HPC, was to change the design of the fence, to say, listen, you were okay with a wood fence, but being that we can go to 4 foot, here's a wrought iron design that's more historically appropriate, makes more sense for the streetscape, and something we think you like more. So we did do that in there. November 25th, 2024 came. The applicants and myself, we appeared before the HPC, and during the course of the presentation that evening, very early on, as you see in the transcript that was provided as Exhibit C, the HPC chairman indicated that the original application was approved in error, as he called it, and that's right from the record. It's page 9, lines 13 and 14 of the transcript. And he indicated thereafter that since it is coming back for a fence which is required, assuming he's speaking to the resolution of the Planning Board, our position is that it opens up the discussion to consider whether the pool is appropriate at that location. This is problematic, obviously, as we see it for a number of reasons. The first of which is that that wasn't sent back on remand from the Planning Board for consideration by the HPC. But secondly, the pool never moved. Between the first time we submitted to the HPC, all the way through the Planning Board approval, and then secondly, on our second application to the HPC, that proposed in-ground swimming pool, the dimensions, the location, none of it ever changed. So to say that it's not appropriate at that location now seems to be very, very arbitrary. The chairman then went on to say that, so tonight we're going to consider more than the fence. We'll consider the entire application. The fact that it was made in error does not prevent us from revisiting it at this point. Cited to no legal basis for being able to reconsider it, anything in the code, case law, or otherwise, just that we can do it because we want to do it at this point, despite the fact that the Planning Board did not give them any authority to review anything more than gates and fences. Coincidentally enough, as you can see from the transcript, and I'll highlight if necessary specific pages, again, the only items back before that board were gating and fencing. And despite the fact that the board, after reconsidering the entirety of the application, despite a standing objection from us that they had no authority to do so, they denied the entirety of the application, but 5 of the members that were there that evening actually spoke in favor of the proposed fencing. So if they would have just abided by the remand requirements of the Planning Board, we would have walked out with the exact approval that we needed and been well on our way here. Instead, they unilaterally acted to hear the entirety of the application anew, despite our objection, denied it in full. We filed this appeal thereafter, within the timeframes required under the municipal code, to essentially say that the actions of the HPC were arbitrary, capricious, and or contrary to law. For all the reasons I just went over, I think it's pretty clear, at least in our estimation, that everything that they did from the Planning Board remand onward was arbitrary and capricious. And that's based on not only their approval the first time through, but the fact that they had multiple opportunities to tell us that they had some form of an issue with what we proposed and never did so.
So when it went back to the Planning Board, did they take the fence down to 4 feet?
So the Planning Board, the original plan...
Because was it mandated to be a 4-foot fence in front yards?
It was. So when we went to the Planning Board, the original application requested 6-foot fence. During the discussion that evening with the Planning Board, they made clear that they were not going to approve a 6-foot fence in the front yard. So that was what triggered the need for us to say, okay, that's fine, we'll go to 4 foot, but they wanted to be sure that even though the HPC typically deals with design, that the HPC was going to be okay with a 4-foot wood fence in that front yard as opposed to the 6. Design didn't change in any way whatsoever, solely the height. So that's what we did. Again, when we filed the the application for amended approval, we said, we're keeping the design the same, we'll change it to wrought iron because we think it's more consistent, but if you want to approve us for a 4-foot wood fence like you did a 6, we're fine with that. Again, they went well beyond the scope of that remand requirement in considering this anew and denying us that night. And again, our position is that from a legal standpoint, that was arbitrary, capricious, and contrary to any direction that they had from the Planning Board. Again, I don't want to continue to repeat, but they had so many different bites at the apple here to tell us there was an issue. We could have addressed this well back in March of 2024. We didn't because we were told we were okay. The clients expended a very large sum of money and continue to, based on this decision that they made, which we believe is arbitrary and capricious. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you had another question, but you look like you were getting ready to ask me one.
No, I have a few questions, but
Got it.
right now.
Can I just make a comment? Since we have somebody attending by phone, if everybody could make sure they have the mics close to them when they speak, it would be a great help to Mr. Gillen Schwartz.
Still with us, Chris?
Thank you.
I'm here.
Okay. Just additionally, so Chapter 525, Section 35.4, it's the HPC, Historic Preservation Commission area of the Land Development Ordinance here in Cape May. Subsection 4 indicates that the role of the Historic Preservation Commission is to advise the Planning and Zoning Board on applications for development pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-110. Our position is here. The advice that they provided was that we're okay with this. They approved it in committee and gave us no inclination or documentation indicating they had any issue whatsoever with the proposed design of all of those items, the in-ground pool, the patio pavers, the landscaping, and the gating and fencing. The gating and fencing came later, obviously, after the planning board. Additionally, once the planning board made their determination on August 27th as to approval in the application for development that was submitted, it's my opinion that the application for development in and of itself became final when you got through the appeal period. There was never an appeal of that determination by any body. Yes, it was conditioned upon the HPC saying, are you okay with this gating and fencing plan? But no other aspects of that approval were ever appealed or otherwise brought into question by anybody. So again, I think that brings more into question the actions of the HPC, whether they had any authority to do so. Not only did they not get that direction from the board, but I also don't think they had any guidance under the municipal land use law or authority to do what they did on that date. For all of those reasons, it's our position that the actions of that body were arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, and contrary to law and direction that they were given by the planning board. And we're asking you this evening to overturn their determination and allow us to proceed with the proposed development that had been approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the gentleman from the HBC able to answer questions?
Is Chris going to make any statement?
Or is it
Let's hear from Chris.
Yeah, Mr. Barnes, can you just let me know that everybody can hear me in that room?
We can hear him.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Hey, listen, I want to thank everybody for allowing me to appear virtually. I know we're not taking testimony tonight. This is a special case. Vacations are hard to come by. I was ready to go last month, and the applicant requested adjournment, which I was consented to. But I also didn't want to hold up the works on this. People have to make decisions and move on with their planning. So I wanted to thank you for the ability for me to participate virtually. Look, I can cut right to the chase on this. And Mr. Emenhauser is being diplomatic. Obviously a mistake was made here, right? But the outcome of that is, and what this board has to decide is, do you get a pool by accident in the city of Cape May in a front yard in a historic district? And I think the answer to that in this case has to be no. And I know that there's a lot of frustration as to how we got here. And it's definitely not the poster child for navigating the application process in the city of Cape May. But the simple question of, is the HPC bound by an approved and reviewed pool? The answer has to be no, because the issue is, and what we have to look at is the way that the HPC reviews these types of applications. So we have the review committee, which, like the zoning officer, will review these things as they come through the construction office, and we have the majority of the applications processed by the HPC are in review. It's either by the chairman or one less than a quorum, which is 3. So those are the types of things that you see for siding, windows, doors. I need a new roof. It's the speedy type of things. It's the small type of things, and those are minor applications. Specifically exempt from that in the city code is things like new construction or additions and accessory structures. You know, the bigger type things. You're going to put a garage. You're going to put a new house. You're going to add a back room to a house. And a pool, which is also an accessory structure. So this simply does not fit within the category of things that should have breezed through the review committee. And it's not the type of thing that the review committee has the authority to weigh in on and approve. So clearly and obviously and admittedly, there was a mistake here. But the reality of the situation is the HPC was looking at it, and they don't need the planning board's permission to look at this issue. It came back to them because of that referral about the fence issue. But this is the city of Cape May has a strong commission, not a weak commission where it's here's our recommendation, but do whatever you want with the planning board. No, we have the HPC is a strong commission. It's one of the boxes that you have to check on the way to a construction permit. So if the HPC wanted to look at this without the planning board's permission, they have every right to, because that's the way our code is and that's the way it is in the municipal land use law. So when this came back to the HPC, by the way, that pool was never reviewed by that pool concept was never reviewed on the merits of where it's going to go and what it's going to look like and how's it going to be screened on Decatur Street. That discussion happened before the board for the first time when Mr. Amenhauser and his clients came in and presented that after we voted on to consider, and they came back to the fence issue. So that was very late in the game. That should have happened here, right? But they came in with an approved in review, which was a mistake. But again, the review committee does not have the authority to approve a new house or an accessory structure or an addition. So it's just not the category of types of things that they should be reviewing and approving. So clearly it's a mistake. And Mr. Amenhauser and his clients acknowledged when they came to the HPC that they were pre-construction permit. There's no shovels in the ground. There's no pool in the ground. And if you look out there today, and if you looked out there before, it's a garden. And one of the things that the HPC had looked at is that this particular structure, what's commonly known as the Empress, it lost its contributing status because of all these modifications over the years. And this is not me speaking. This is in the historic property survey that's reviewed by the board when they look at these applications when they come in. So, there's a building that lost its contributing status because of all these modifications over the years. You have a garden on the side, facing Decatur, and then a long parking area. And the historic design standards don't like parking in the front. So you look at all these kind of pieces on the site, and sometimes what the HPC has to do is make lemonade out of the situation and try and salvage something for the district. And having a non-contributing structure does not mean anything goes on the site. It means that you get to use different kinds of materials, probably lower grade than maybe on a contributing or a key contributing structure. But it doesn't mean that anything goes on the site. We still have to think about the district, and particularly in this location. It's almost in the center of town. You're near the Washington Street Mall. You're in the heart of the city of Cape May and the historic district. So the idea that the HPC would just approve a pool in a front yard area, visible, potentially visible, was a non-starter because you had the parking in the front and a building that's already lost its contributing character. So what they didn't want to do is compound more negatives for the site and further detract from the district. So, and you'll find that reasoning in the resolution, and that was one of the considerations that was expressed by one of the board members in their deliberations. They're worried about the impact on the site. There's already some things going on that took it out of contributing status, and we don't want to compound errors. So that was the reasoning behind it. Again, it's not ideal how we got there, but if you look at this, I don't think it's unfortunate, but you can't possibly look at the HPC and say that their reasoning is arbitrary increases. They gave the reasons. They just don't like the answer, which is no to this pool. But there are historic design standard reasons for saying no to the pool. For instance, a pool is referred to as an intrusive feature under the historic design standards. This is something we don't want to see in the streetscape. It should be out of sight. And by the way, one of the board members noted probably the reason that this error was made is that the site survey plot plan that was submitted in review did not clearly show where the streets were in relation to the site. So it's the chairman, I think, was under the impression that it wouldn't be a corner lot. that the pool would actually be out of sight in the true rear yard. But on this site, it has two front yards, right? This huge street in Decatur. That wasn't immediately apparent on that plot plan that was shown. And I'm not trying to say, and the HPC is not trying to say that there's some subterfuge here or something like that. It's just, it's part of the mistake, right? So that it wasn't immediately clear where the pool was going in relation to the streetscape. So there's an explanation for how we got here. And mistakes happen, and I disagree wholeheartedly with Mr. Amenhauser. There is a legal basis. I mean, all government action is voidable. And the citation for that is Hill v. Board of Adjustment, Eatontown, 122 NJ Super 156. That's an appellate divisions case, 1972. That's in the resolution. I put it right there. So we're not just making this stuff up. It's unfortunate how we got here, but I'll end with what I started with, which is that we have a National Historic Landmark. We have a local HPC, which governs building and construction in the local district. We can't have pools by accident in the city of Cape May. This one is not 2 years in the ground. It's not, there aren't even shovels in the ground. There's still a garden there. That garden should stay because it at least contributes something to the district. And that was the finding of the HPC.
So basically, you're saying that you did not initially approve just because you didn't have a full committee?
Undoubtedly, they got some indication of approval in review. But what I'm indicating is that that's under the code. That is not the type of thing. A pool is not the type of thing that gets approved in review. And the citation for that and the code sections are all in that resolution. I provided all that back in the resolution, anticipating we'd be having this discussion tonight.
Am I able to respond?
If you'd like.
Yeah, I just to touch on a couple of points. I mean, one of the first statements made by Mr. Gillenschwartz there was, do you get a pool by accident in the city of Cape May? And I think I agree with him. You don't. In this scenario, there was 3 opportunities for the board to tell us you are not getting a pool in this location. We don't agree with it. They didn't do it on any of those 3 occasions. Instead, they said, you're allowed to have this. We then went to the planning board and submitted an application for it. There's also, there was a statement made that pool specifics were never discussed on the record until we came back before the full body. We know, and it's because the HPC told us, we're going to approve this in committee if you submit it. We only did what we were told we could do by the secretary of the HPC. To then hold that against us and say that there's something that was wrong here or amiss by the HPC because of it is, again, negligence, I guess, at its finest, but it's arbitrary, it's capricious, it's unreasonable. For those reasons, and then the idea, I guess, at the end, and this has come up multiple times, that because we haven't constructed the pool yet, that this is all okay, is just, in my mind, an absurd argument. The amount of money that these applicants have spent since the time that we initially filed and received approval till now is enormous. So to say that it's okay, and that, yeah, we may have made a mistake, it just doesn't sit with us, and I do not think it passes the smell test or the legal standard required for your consideration.
Any other questions for,
You want,
is he gone?
do you want to respond, Chris?
Again, as I indicated, this is not the poster child for navigating the permitting process in the city of Cape May, but it's important enough that the HPC has to say no to it. You think about, they're proposing a pool in a forward, front-facing area of Decatur in the heart of the historic district. So if it wasn't apparent at the point of review, there should be some reason for that. And the explanation was that it wasn't clearly shown on the plot plan. Once they realized what it was, there was sort of a red alarm fire of, what do we do about this? And they were coming back to the board anyway to revisit it. And it had to be addressed because the reality is, as Mr. Amenhauser just acknowledged, the full board did not consider the merits of that pool until they got to this application that is, we're appealing now. So it had to be addressed. The answer has to be no from the HPC standpoint. It's not an enthusiastic, everything was done right, but we're talking about procedure here. The substance is correct. The substance of saying no to that is correct. And, they had to navigate some permitting process anyway to get here. And everybody is presumed to go notice of the city code provisions. All the city code provisions that I cited were online available to anybody before this application was even filed. So again, it's unfortunate, but it doesn't alter the substance of the HPC gave reasons for why it said no, and those reasons are based on the city code and the design standards. That's it, and that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for Chris? All right, no more questions. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I mean, I just want to say that from what the HPC is a strong HPC, and HPC approval is required for this project, and it was a major application, and it required full board approval, which it didn't have. Maybe both sides are responsible for that, too. We know, as the applicant, they know that they require a full board approval by what's in there.
If I can respond, we were told by the HPC itself that we were not going to be required to have full approval. I have it, it's a copy is in the exhibit packet.
Right, but that's, if you read the requirements for a pool, it requires full board approval.
So I guess we're not to take the direction of a body
Of a
in this
secretary?
town, right? We're just not to listen to them when they tell us, here's how we're going to review your application.
I'm stating my opinion. You have your opinion.
I
That's
know.
how you want to be. I feel that it's a strong HPC. HPC approval is required. It's a major application, and it required full board approval. It had to be submitted and discussed with the full board, not a committee.
Then, and this was a question I wanted to ask, if it's a strong HPC and they make the final call, why are we even here tonight? What are we doing?
And the applicant is able to appeal the decision.
But appealing to a body that can't override the decision that's been made by the HPC?
You can. You're the
Well,
appeal board.
okay, so tonight, if we approve the pool, then the HPC's decision is overridden.
You're not approving, your role tonight, in my opinion, and based on the code, is that you're reviewing to determine, and if you look at page 3 of my report, it sets forth your role tonight. And I'll read that into the record just so everyone's clear. A determination by the Historic Preservation Commission on issues within its authority shall be entitled to due deference. If in the case of an appeal made pursuant to this subsection, the Zoning Board of Adjustment determines there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or refusal made by the construction official pursuant to a certificate or denial of a certificate submitted by the Historic Preservation Commission in accordance with NJSA 40:55D111, the Zoning Board of Adjustment shall in writing include the reasons for its determination in the findings of its decision thereon. The determination of the Historic Preservation Commission may be overturned only if the Zoning Board of Adjustment finds that the Historic Preservation Commission determination was arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or contrary to law. So you are the appeal, that the applicant is bringing that appeal, and you're to determine whether the HPC, based on their findings, there's no new introduction of findings of fact or anything like that, but based on the resolutions and everything that was done, was their determination arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or contrary to law?
Well,
That's your role here tonight.
It's still not, what's not clear to me is I look at this, and what I'm looking for is where did they go wrong with the codes? Not HPC aside, where did they go wrong with the codes? I was on the planning board that voted on this.
Right, I know.
And we had, they didn't do anything wrong with the codes, right? So as I see it now, the zoning board, is you can't really find a flaw in here except that the HPC's got to approve it. And,
So-
but what I heard what you just said. I guess all I'm saying then is that it just seems to be kind of
Right.
straightforward.
That's fine, that's okay. I just took issue, you can't be dismissive. The applicant is certainly able to bring this to us, and you're to rule whether it's arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or contrary to law, the determination that the HPC made.
But the HPC determination's got nothing to do with the code, is the problem. It's my problem.
I don't agree. I think it does.
But I mean, what I'm saying is that they're saying no for reasons other than zoning codes,
Which are
You
allowed
as
to.
a board member.
which they are allowed, I understand that they're allowed to do. Can we?
So what we're asking is, they said no the second time around, right? We came back to them, they said no. The issue that we have is, they said yes the first time around. And they did it in an abbreviated manner that they recommended and told us, this is what to do to get here.
And
So-
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess all I'm trying to be clear on is that if you, again, their no had nothing to do with codes. And I guess, am I missing something? Other than,
Mr. Chairman,
other
can
than-
I add something to this?
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, yes. But
I
then,
think
but
that's-
Chris, keeping in mind that I'm not on the HPC and I don't think like an HPC person, I just want to be sure that we're looking at it in the same light.
Right, but you have to just keep the hat on of that of a board member on the zoning board of adjustments. And your role
That's-
is to listen to the arguments that were advanced, to read the four corners of the documents that you were provided, then make a determination as to whether or not the HPC committee, when they rendered their decision, acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner. That's your job, that's it. That's all you're supposed to look at. You might not like it, you might have a different opinion as to how we got here, but your role on the zoning board is to say, did that board, the HPC board, act arbitrary and capricious when they entered into their ruling? And that's it, that's your job.
Mr. Chairman, can I add something to this?
Yes, you may.
To Mr. Yeager's point, I agree with all the prior statements that were made. The zoning board is here to be the brakes on HPC decision-making. You're the last stop before a court case. And it's really a challenge to the HPC to make sure any decision that goes to you, because your board has appellate jurisdiction, essentially you review our decisions when people don't like what the outcomes are, is to make sure that what we're doing makes sense under our design standards, that we're giving people an explanation as to why we did something. And if you look at that here, you can really see that the arbitrary and capricious decision was the review committee approval in an email or whatever it was. There's really no reasoning behind that. But when they actually came before the board and we reviewed the tool, we gave them a ton of reasons why it wasn't going to work. And all those are in writing, and they're tied to code sections, and they're tied to design standards and things that the HPC regularly has to apply. So if you look at this case, the almost really simple kind of conclusion of it all is the original decision that they want to rely on is the arbitrary and capricious one. The one that the HPC actually gave after they thought about it, considered on it, chewed it up, and spit it out. That contained all the things that we try to base our decision making on. And for that reason, it can't be arbitrary and capricious. They just don't want the answer, and I understand that. But it doesn't mean that we didn't make a decision based on our design standards.
I'm just going to note a continued objection. What Mr. Gillenschwartz is saying is that the fact that this got back to them somehow opened the floodgates for them to unilaterally say, hey, we're going to just consider this entire thing anew, even though we granted you approval before. I don't think it matters whether it was in review, whether it was by the full commission or not. The HPC acted as an entire body on June 17th to approve it. Might have been reviewed in committee, but it was never questioned by the full board when they then voted on it. Unanimously approved it. And to say that when it came back, that was the arbitrary and capricious action, but when it came back, we acted non-arbitrarily, you never had the authority to do that. The remand was solely related to 2 items, gates and fences. Then they said, well, it's back here, so we'll just do whatever we want, and we'll consider it anew. To say that that's not arbitrary and capricious and rather is non-arbitrary and which should have happened, I just think it goes completely out of bounds. It's never what was supposed to happen, and it's never what the planning board envisioned happened when they put the resolution together requiring us to go back.
So my question then to our attorney is pretty much one of, I get why the HPC did what it did. The planning board, when we listened to this, to be honest with you, not everybody was really thrilled about it because we're talking about putting a pool right in the middle of the city, in the historic, on Decatur Street. We said, you're a block and a half from the Washington Street Mall. It all just didn't sit right. However, at the end of the day, unless you put it in a code that you can say no to something because you just don't like it, I don't understand how. That's why the planning board voted yes unanimously. It was yes across the board. It was plainly and simply all the provisions were met. So whereas I feel I understand what the HPC did, as a member of the zoning board, I can't come to that same conclusion. I don't think I have the right to. I don't think I have the right to say I don't like that pool being there.
Well,
It's not
this
saying
HPC,
that you don't like the pool being there. You have to take everything that was presented to you and then determine whether or not the board at the HPC acted arbitrary and capricious in their decision. And when you do that, it's an interesting argument because Emenhauser will indicate that they should only act on what was before them. Gill and Schwartz will say that they have to act on everything that was before them, and everything that was before them was there's procedures in place, and quite frankly, the committee dropped the ball on it. That's what Gill and Schwartz is going to argue. You have to sit here and reconcile as to whether or not you think their decision was arbitrary and capricious on what was remanded or what the whole process was. It's not an easy decision for you to make, but that's what's in front of you.
and the HPC made their decision on their design standards, that it didn't fall within the design standards, within, I think they said,
Well,
on
that's
page
ultimately
61.
what they concluded at
the second
hearing.
meeting.
Right.
And again, Emenhauser is advancing that this happened 3 times and no one said a word. And now all of a sudden, when they got their 4th bite at the apple, to use your terminology, that's when they decided that things have gone wrong and we need to right them. And the way we right them is we look at the code, and the code says you were supposed to have done all these things before we even got here. Now we're going to step in and use our jurisdiction and say the committee was wrong, and that's how they came up with their decision. The reason why people file appeals is because generally there's a big dispute in hand and there's not a clear-cut answer. And so they boast advanced, colorful arguments, and you as the board unfortunately have to sit here and sift through it and make your determination.
I think there's also a barrier in place, too. I understand that there's a review committee and there's a full HPC. But this goes back to the point I made where the full committee gets to decide whether every application reviewed or denied in committee should stand. That's why it's on the agenda for every full committee hearing, and that's why they decide, they motion, they second, and they vote on whether or not they're going to ratify those determinations. So and I'm not trying to sound glib, but I guess unless the argument is we look at it, but we really don't look at what occurred and just blindly approve, then they did evaluate these and consider their design standards, or at least they had a duty to do so and should have. And if they didn't, I'm hard-pressed to find out why that is our issue at this point, is what I'm getting at.
If we didn't have a strong HPC, we would not have been reviewing it. It's because they are a strong HPC, and they realized it was their mistake, and then they went back to go over it. And that's the reason why we will lose our national status if we keep letting people do whatever they want to do. And in the historic district, HPC really should have the final answer.
And I don't disagree. They gave us a final answer here before we even went to planning board, is the argument that we're making, on 3 different occasions. And the 4th occasion, they decided that they were wrong and that they're going to change their mind. And that's,
But see, I don't think they gave their full approval until it was before the full board. And to me, that's the approval when it's before the full board. A committee cannot make the approval that's not been submitted and presented before the full board?
I don't disagree, and that's to the point I just made. When this went before the full board on June 17th, 2024, for their meeting, they looked at, or should have looked at, every application approved or disapproved in committee. They then voted on each and every one of those. They vote on them as a block, I understand, but the name of the applicant, the address, what was asked for, and whether or not it's contributing is all right there. What they do beyond that, I don't think we can force them all to hand read every application if they decide they're not going to do it on their own merits. But apparently, that's what happened here if they're realizing it's a mistake well after the fact.
Any other questions?
Is the HPC chair going to speak at all, or?
We're not relitigating the matter, I don't think so.
All you can do is listen to the arguments that both attorneys advanced and look at the text that's been provided to you. I mean,
Okay, I just wasn't sure, just asking.
Okay, so if there are no more questions right now, Craig?
So I would just like to, so I am not an expert in historic preservation. I am an engineer and a planner. So when I prepare these reports, I do it just more fact-finding and just summarizing and directing you to what appropriate sections of the ordinance that you should be paying attention to. So I'm not going to go exhaustively through this. I did point out under the completeness review on page 3 of 5, and I already read that into the record, so I won't do it again. But that is the considerations, and that's the reason you're here hearing this appeal of the decision of the HPC. And I believe that the balancing test, or your decision tonight, is whether the HPC's determination was arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or contrary to law. That's the verbiage in the ordinance. That's what you should be considering. Now, and that's strictly from section 525-37E5. That gives you the appeal power of the decisions of the HPC. There are a couple of corrections. So just if everyone's aware, I am the planning board engineer. I did hear this original application. I am familiar with the process. When I started this application, I utilized my review memo from the planning board. It contains a couple of inconsistencies, or it's just one inconsistency in two places. When this application was originally submitted to the planning board, and by the way, this is just for informational purposes, it really shouldn't have any bearing on your decision tonight. I just want to clear up to make sure that this document is correct. On the zoning page, it indicates that there's a variance that was granted by the planning board. There were no variances granted by the planning board. The applicant initially, when they submitted the application, there was a request for a variance that was rescinded during the meeting so that the application totally complied with all the required setbacks. And I'll just fill in a little additional information because there was a discussion of the fence. So when the application was submitted, there was a 6-foot-high fence on the plans. There was a discussion that occurred at the planning board level, and whether a 6-foot-high fence was appropriate. That discussion evolved into, hey, that would be a variance. It's not really appropriate. We're going to change that, and that when that fence height was dropped, that's when it was remanded back to the HPC to see if that fence was appropriate to buffer that pool. But there was a variance-free site plan application that was granted conditionally with the remand back to the HPC. So I just want my page 4 of 5, there's a zoning table at the bottom for a swimming pool that indicates there's a non-conforming front yard to the face of the building. That was complied with. What was proposed was 22.4 feet, which met that requirement. And then on page 5 of my report, the variance, it notes that there was a variance granted by the planning board. That is incorrect. That should be stricken from my report.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
So I just wanted to clear
Wondered
that
about
up.
that.
Just wanted to clear that up. I have nothing else to offer. You should rely on the application that was filed, all of the minutes from the HPC's decision, and review under that criteria that I already indicated.
Craig, I just want to clarify something so that I understand this. So when it went to planning, A variance was requested, the fence was dropped to 4 feet, no variance is required, planning board was okay?
So the variance that was requested wasn't for the fence. That was not picked up,
Okay,
okay? The variance that was requested was for the patio, which encroached into the front yard. So we have a couple of different pool standards. It has to be, you have to meet the setbacks. It can't be between the face of the structure and the street. And it applies to the pool and patio connected. So what they were asking for, the variance was for the patio that was connected to the pool came out in front of the face of the structure. They withdrew that request and moved the patio back to the face of the structure so that no variance was required. There was a separate discussion about the fence height,
okay,
okay? During that discussion, I'm going off of memory,
that's okay.
the discussion was whether a 6-foot-high fence was appropriate at the front right-of-way line,
Okay,
back very close to the sidewalk.
right.
It was determined that it wasn't. After we considered it, it was brought up that that would be a variance. So
The 6-foot fence
the
would have been a
6-foot, that
variance.
you can't have a 6-foot fence in the front yard.
So it was
We-
dropped-
We've had
it
an
was-
application like that.
I'm good, so it was dropped to 4 feet
So it was dropped to 4 feet.
and then remanded back to
So It was
HPC.
dropped to 4 feet. The planning board approved a site plan that didn't require any variances.
Okay,
Okay?
right,
They approved it conditioned, remanded back to the
Back to HPC.
for determination with regards to the fence and the gate.
So if you don't mind, I included in my application packet, it's sub-exhibit E to exhibit A is the actual resolution of the planning board, paragraph 9, and I'll just start with the sentence where it starts here. The HPC approved a 6-foot-high fence where the applicants proposed now a 4-foot-high fence, so the 6-foot-high fence would require a variance. The issues regarding gates and fences are remanded to the HPC for approval before its full board, but the planning board is not in favor of any fence that has a height not consistent with the ordinance requirement of a maximum of 4 feet of height in a front yard, and specifically request the HPC clarify, this is the second part, if the existing iron fence is to be replaced with a wood fence, and where the fence or fences are appropriate for the historic streetscape. So it made clear that those are the items to go back to the HPC. Paragraph 9 of the
But-
Chris, do you have
but
any,
the-
do you want to comment?
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with the idea of the planning board being the only reason that this would go back to the HPC. This is a strong commission, so we're not making recommendations to the planning board for, what they might do on their own. And all these boards have their own independent jurisdiction, and the HPC has the authority to bring this back in. They could have denied a construction permit, made them come back in. So I think this planning board discussion is confusing the issues a little bit. I know Mr. Amenhauser disagrees with that, but that's the way it is in the city, Cape May. You have to go to these boards and check the boxes. And this was a mistake that went through the cracks. But the issue before the zoning board tonight is whether the no that they ultimately got from the full board was without basis. And I don't think that you can look at this and say there wasn't a ton of reasons why to say no to this under the city code and the design standards. That's the basis for the decision.
You good?
I think my objection's pretty clear at this point.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to confuse the issue. I was asked the question, but I just wanted to clear up an inconsistency in my report. You should be making your determination and decision based on what the HPC did.
And
not
that's what I was
plan-
leading up to. This
Not what the
was
planning board did.
That's, I wanted clarity from what was discussed at planning. It was sent back to HPC. The cause of the fence, correct?
Because of the fence.
And HPC, as a full commission, is now looking at the entire project. I understand it was sent back because of the fence, but HPC that night, according to the transcript, says a pool is not minor. This is a major piece, and they now want to review the whole thing. Am I correct so far?
I
You
believe
are.
you're correct.
Okay, so the question before us in my mind is it arbitrary, capricious, I forgot the rest of what's in there, I'm not an attorney, for them to decide, well, wait a minute, we got to take a look at this thing because, I don't know, did they err? Did they make a mistake? Did a committee make a mistake? I don't know the answer to that. The question is not about their process and procedure. The question is it arbitrary and capricious? That's the question that's before us?
Yes.
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 It's a good way to summarize.
Yes.
And if I can, Mr. Webb,
Three
before
attorneys just said yes.
I lose.
That never happens.
Before I lose the chance, in speaking to Mr. King before we got here, he did indicate that he'd give the applicants who have come down and they're here the opportunity to say something on this. I know they're inclined to do so. I just want to ask the board for that indulgence based on my prior discussion with Mr. King.
Fine, why don't we finish?
Yeah, I don't want to cut anybody off, but I just wanted to make sure to reserve that.
I read every page, went back and looked at on video of all the meetings. It's going to be a tough decision, but I went to the city master plan. And under land use law, this is one of the goals of the master plan, and I quote, is to protect the character of any district in the city. I think that we have to look at that as part of this, is what's going to happen if a pool is installed there. Pools are permanent. It's like building a house. It's a permanent thing that's going to be there forever. This is the heart of the city. It's half a block to the mall, a block to the beach. Trying to correct it by putting a wall of trees up, to me, goes against another rule of light, air, and open space. You're walking down there and you have a beautiful garden now that you say people love to take pictures of. All of a sudden, that's going to be gone, and there's going to be a wall of trees to try to hide the pool. You know, you can't see through the yard, which is back in that time, everybody had, you know, you could see down the street and see through everybody's yards and stuff. That's what I took as guidance. That's just my, anybody else wants to say anything?
And you use that to determine whether or not the board acted in an arbitrary, capricious manner?
That's a good question. I took that as more of my goal or my job is what I should be doing here. I know we're supposed to be determining whether it's arbitrary, but I don't believe it was arbitrary.
Can I?
Yeah, please,
Sorry.
please.
Looking at this, that's normally a consideration of granting your power to grant variances and consider the master plan and the impact on the zoning. The HPC's role is not to consider the master plan. They're experts in historic preservation. They made their decision based on historic preservation and their guidelines, requirements, and standards. I think that's the test.
But they're asking,
I don't disagree with Craig. I know this is difficult for this board because you're not judges, you're not attorneys, you don't hear these things that often. You hear applications in front of the zoning board where you're looking at the different variances. You did it in 2 applications before this, and you granted use variances, and you understand that there's a higher proof there. That's what you're geared to do. You do this analysis, and now all of a sudden you're faced with this whole new beast that's come into you that has a complicated fact pattern, that has multiple layers to it. And Mr. Amenhauser set that out in a brief way, but also in a voluminous way with what he submitted. And he indicated that there's various steps that occurred before they even got to the planning board. And now we're talking about nuances that occurred at the planning board and reports that have been modified and master plans. And all this stuff is wonderful conversation and it's intellectually stimulating, but it's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're looking at what did that HPC board do when they got that application and when they made their ruling. And when they made their ruling, do you think that their ruling was arbitrary and capricious based upon what's been presented? That's all. I know it sounds rudimentary, but that's what you're asked to do, and you got to stick to what the law requires you to do.
Can I ask one more question on that process, just to make sure I'm getting it correctly? So the public city code and design standards, a mistake was made where they didn't follow them. Then they came back around, fixed the mistake. So wouldn't we technically be appealing to override city code and design standards? That's where I'm...
No. You're determining whether or not the board, when they acted arbitrary and capricious. And you could figure out what
why they voted the way they voted, and it seems like what you're saying is they voted because it seemed contrary to the codes that existed at the HPC, and in your mind, that might be enough that they didn't act arbitrary and capricious because they were just following what they were supposed to follow, albeit late in the game.
Got it.
I mean, Mr. Gillen Schwartz indicated, he said this isn't the poster child of how the HPC should act, but I guess the question is, did they act correctly when they did it by way of not acting arbitrary and capricious with their vote? Unless any other board members want to talk about what's happened so far?
No.
Then perhaps if Mr. King indicated to Mr. Amenhauser that the applicants have the ability to speak, that's fine. The only thing I asked John and the applicants is this, is
We understand we can't introduce new evidence, we can't introduce new facts. We have to-
And I get that this is a supercharged emotional thing. Like, you've been living this for a long time, you spent a lot of money, you probably have arguments at the family about this and how much it's eating away at, like, just the family being and what your dreams were, and I get all that, I understand it. I don't want to hear about it, and I know that sounds awful and calculating. What I want to hear about is the facts that you believe the board should know, not about your emotions, because that's not really relevant in how the HPC responded. Sorry that it's somewhat cold and calculating, but I want this board to understand that whatever feedback you're given, we want it to be similar to what the attorneys did, and that is they relied upon what's in the text here. So if you can expand upon the text, that's great.
Well, to be honest, I mean, most of what I have prepared is really an introduction to us personally, because what happened, if you read the transcript at the HPC meeting, had nothing to do with standards, setbacks, guidelines, construction code, property use, fencing at all. There were 5 or 6 members of the board that specifically, emphatically said that they were fully in favor of the fence that we chose. We never had an intention to put a 6-foot wood fence. We never had an intention to put a wood fence at all. I was on the plan because we were told, just, this isn't about the fence, it's about the pool. So just, get your paperwork in and move along. When we got the approval, we went shopping for our materials. And that's where the 4-foot wrought iron fence came in. And they absolutely loved it. We have absolutely no intention of diminishing the streetscape in any way, shape, or form. We take tremendous pride in our home. And if you drive by our home, you'll see that. You'll see the care. We bought our home 5 years ago. It was our dream to buy this home. We painted it, fully repainted the home 2 years after we purchased it. Not because we needed to, not because it was due, because we love the property and we want to make sure it presents as beautiful as it possibly can. We repainted every square inch of the outside of that home. No one asked us to do so. We put drip lines on our flower lines, across both of our porches. No one asked us to do so. We do these things at our expense because we want the property to present as beautiful as it possibly can. That's why we bought our home. So the idea that we would allow ourselves to diminish the beauty of our property because we want a pool is, to me, is insane. We have a garden area that, gardens are beautiful, but we have a garden that we can't use. There are walkways throughout the entire garden. There's pavers wound in a network with plantings in every direction, with trees that were not kept up for more than 12 years. The garden was in disarray. And the only reason we haven't done more to beautify the garden was because as soon as we closed on our home, we knew that we wanted to put a pool in the back of our garden area and enhance the garden around it. We're not trying to build a wall of trees. We're trying to build a beautiful garden with a pool in the back. We didn't ask for a bigger pool than we're allowed. We didn't ask for a pool closer to our home. We didn't ask for a pool closer to the street than we're allowed. We didn't ask for more pavers than we're allowed. We met with a zoning officer in May of 2023. He graciously spent about 3 hours walking our property. I think his name was Bruce Britton. He graciously spent that time with us. He introduced us to a pool contractor. He went through everything that we would have had to do before any of this started. And that's when we started the process. And we never, we have no intention of doing anything other than making a beautiful garden. We have a beautiful garden, we just can't use it. And our garden currently, and I did bring this up at the last meeting, and I just didn't do a very good job of articulating it. Our garden currently appears like it's a public property, but it's our property. It's not public. So people walk in there, and they bring in garbage and beer bottles and candy wrappers, and it gets thrown around the garden. It's not, we love the garden. We have a beautiful garden in our home that we live in, full time. We want a garden like that here that we can use, that we can put a table in, that we can sit down at outside. You can't do anything in that garden currently except walk inside of it. That's all you can do. And all we want to do is enjoy our property. We don't want to do anything to diminish the streetscape. With the new fence and the new plantings and the floral plantings behind it and the new flowering trees that we want to install, it's going to look better than it ever has. And we wouldn't stand anything that didn't do that. We wouldn't allow it to be done, ever. So, I apologize if that's more than you wanted to hear, but.
Okay, thank you.
Any others?
Mr. Barnes?
Yeah, I'll let you speak, Mr. Gillens. Just bear with me for a second.
Well,
'Cause
okay.
it appears that the applicant's spouse and son may be here, and I don't know if Mr. King authorized them.
It was essentially a discussion related to public comment, and the fact that if there was public comment to be had, he'd allow my clients to then speak.
Okay,
Well, we haven't had it yet.
We haven't, they're the applicant.
I get it. So,
I don't think anyone was sworn.
Yeah, there's usually not public comment with our appeals.
Okay.
okay.
Mr. Barnes, can I be heard?
One second, Chris.
Sure.
Are you good?
Good. We prepared something for my son to speak. But there's no public comment. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
All right. I mean, this is a little bit out of order, I guess, Chris, but I mean, I think it would be intellectually unfair and not equitable if I don't allow you to give some kind of response, but only as it relates to what you just heard, please.
Well, I believe, and this is the first time hearing an applicant speak at one of these, so what I'd like to do is see if the board would entertain the chair, who I think is present, if he could just respond to the applicant on the same topic, and very briefly.
He's asking to respond to the comments?
No, he's asking that the chairman of the HPC board now respond.
When I had
I want to, Chris, I mean, the idea behind this is that we're supposed to be sitting as, not me, but the board is supposed to be sitting as like a quasi judicial board, judges, right, with robes on, and they're supposed to hear what's been presented by way of the documents as well as the arguments advanced by the attorney. I wasn't privy to the conversation.
And I agree with that.
Yep.
But we just heard from the applicant. So it's actually not critical, and I don't think what the applicant brought forward really changes the analysis. What I was going to say is I don't necessarily object to them speaking, because there's no doubt that again it was a mistake that led to this. But the HPC had to rely on their standards to fix the problem. And I know that they don't like the answer, but they're the protectors of the district, and that's what they were doing. There was an explanation given. There was reasons given. They don't like the answer, but that doesn't change the fact that there were reasons, and they were based on the standards.
Right, and I don't
So
necessarily.
I'm not going to go any further than that. I think the board has heard enough
I don't necessarily know
on this tonight.
if the chairman of the HPC can say it more eloquently than you did. I don't think you need him to testify. And I think it's, at that point, it's just duplicity, and you're kind of wasting, not you wasting time, but it's wasting time because it's not going to be any different than what you said. I think at this point, we should cut off any more testimony or arguments. The board can go into its deliberation.
said on the agenda that there was public comments, and as much as you're trying to shut me up, neighbor.
The only thing
I
I-
can't.
The only thing I'll
can't
say-
respond.
This goes directly to what is before you, and it goes directly to the decision of what the board relied on in making the decision to determine what their. So we're allowing public comment?
We're not,
I'm just going to.
we're not,
Guys, I got it. The only thing I want to add, Jeff, Mr. Sucher commented at the HPC hearing, the transcript provided includes testimony that he provided at that time. So if we're not expanding upon that, he's already provided the testimony. It's in the record.
I think we've gone far enough here with hearing testimony. The reality is the proof is in the documents that have been provided that everyone has read and the arguments that have been advanced by the attorneys. I think it's appropriate now to just go into deliberation and render your decision. Yep, so we recommend a motion to determine whether or not the board of the HPC acted in an arbitrary, capricious fashion and was unreasonable with their finding. You heard what Mr. Hurlis said. He gave you the legal definition. Craig, you can read that back to them if you like.
If the board wants me to, I will.
Yes, good.
Please do.
Okay.
Just the standard itself.
All right, the standard, this is from section 525-37E5. And this is a a determination by the Historic Preservation Commission on issues within its authority shall be entitled to due deference. If in the case of an appeal made pursuant to the subsection, the Zoning Board of Adjustment determines there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or refusal made by the construction official pursuant to a certificate or denial of a certificate submitted by the Historic Preservation Commission in accordance with NJSA 40:55D111, the Zoning Board of Adjustment shall, in writing, include the reasons for its determination in the findings of its decision thereon. The determination of the HPC may be overturned only if the Zoning Board of Adjustment finds that the Historic Preservation Commission determination was arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or contrary to the law. Okay?
Good, thanks.
Excuse me.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
I don't know how you're planning on framing the motion, but I just wanted to bring up, and perhaps some board members are familiar with this too, but it's been a while since an HPC appeal came before the zoning board. I believe that in the past, Mr. King would frame the motion in the affirmative, but then ask the board members to just indicate which side they agree with. And that kind of keeps it clearer for the board members to know how they should be voting, rather than saying yes to whatever motion. Just pick a side. Do you agree with the applicant or you agree with the HPC? And that might make everybody's vote a little bit more clear.
So you want us to frame the motion that you vote yes in favor of the HPC's decision?
No. I'm saying that board members just indicate which side they agree with.
That's fine. So their role is to determine whether or not the HPC acted in an arbitrary, capricious fashion. And when the board members vote, they're going to say, I believe they acted arbitrary and capricious. I believe they did not.
That's fine.
So you're not motioning, you're not
That-
taking a straw poll.
That's the motion. Did they act arbitrary and capricious? And their response to that is going to be, they're going to say they did or they didn't.
Okay.
It's like saying yes or no.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good.
Usually we do the affirmative, so wouldn't it be that the HPC did not act? Or, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just getting a little confused.
There's no reason to be confused. You just need to decide whether or not the HPC acted in an arbitrary and capricious fashion. You're going to say they did or they didn't. I mean, I can say, do you accept the findings of the HPC?
Yeah.
How's that? That's just like saying, do you agree to the use variance?
So you just need motions on that?
I'll make a motion, sorry.
I'll second it.
Okay. Ms. Sheehan motions, Mr. Walsh seconds. Mrs. Notch?
Yeah, I believe that the HPC did their job, and I agree with them.
Ms. Sheehan?
I agree with the HPC. It's a strong HPC. HPC approval is required. It was a major application, and it required to be reviewed by the entire board. Planning board does not trump the HPC. They are separate and distinct. That the HPC used their design standards to make their decision, which was page 5, page 12, and page 45 of their design standards, and they based their decisions on them. A pool is an intrusive structure, and that's why they use their design standards.
Mr. Walsh?
I agree with the HPC also.
Mr. Zexer?
I agree with the HPC.
Mr. Yeager?
I didn't agree with the HPC until I think something that was shown to me was that I'd never realized was in fact part of HPC's code is that you can't have a pool in the side yard and it can't be visible and you can't hide it with plantings. I thought that they were allowed to do that. I don't want pools in side yards anywhere in the city, to be honest with you, but unfortunately we allow it in most cases, but HPC, not in the historic district, you can't do it. And then I would have said, well, put 6-foot arborvitae up, like at my place. But they say, no, you can't do that. So I have to agree that they're not, they didn't vote in an arbitrary or capricious manner. They're following their rules and regulations. So I'm voting in favor of the HPC being not arbitrary and capricious.
Ms. Stevenson?
I believe the HPC acted in a reasonable manner by following their design standards in the city code.
Mr. Venuto?
I'm siding with the HPC as well. Do not believe they acted arbitrary and capriciously. I would think, and I agree with the lawyer earlier, that if they did vote for the pool, that would have been arbitrary and capricious with the environment in Cape May.
Right. Thanks, Rich.
All right, we still have to do this? All right, we need a motion to approve the payment of the boards, I guess zoning board lawyers, and
I make a motion.
I second.
We have a motion by Ms. Sheehan, seconded by Mrs. Notch. Mrs. Notch?
Yes.
Ms. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Zexer?
Yes.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
yes.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Get out of here. All right.